The wind outside Blackridge Hollow didn't whisper. It roared. Inside McCready's tavern, the fire crackled low, casting shadows across faces that had gone hard from too many winters and not enough mercy. The room smelled like wet wool, tobacco, and the kind of sweat that came from men who worked with their hands and judged with their eyes. Rhea Calloway sat in the corner booth, the one nobody else wanted because the draft came through the wall like a knife. She'd learned early that claiming unwanted spaces kept her out of sight. Not invisible. She'd never been that. Women who looked like her didn't get to be invisible, but quiet, manageable. She stirred her coffee, watching the steam rise and disappear. "Dead by now," someone said at the bar. "Ain't no way Mercer survived 3 days in that storm. Should have come down when he had the chance." That was Pete Garvin, the blacksmith, big man with bigger opinions. Mountain takes what it wants. Always has. Rhea kept her eyes on her cup. Someone should check, though. This voice was younger. Tommy Vance, barely 20, still naive enough to think saying the right thing mattered. What if then he's a corpse? Sheriff Dalton's voice cut through the room like a falling axe. And I ain't sending men into a blizzard to carry back a body. The room settled into agreement. Nods, grunts, the comfortable logic of people who'd already decided. Rhea had heard Cade Mercer's name before. Everyone had. The mountain man who'd walked away from town 5 years back built a cabin so far up the ridge that even hunters avoided it. People said he'd gone strange. That isolation did something to a man's mind. People said a lot of things. He knew the risks, someone muttered. Play stupid games, another added, and a few men chuckled. Rhea's fingers tightened on her mug. She'd been hearing variations of that logic her whole life. You know the risks of looking like that. You know what people think. You made your choices, as if existing was a choice, as if being judged was deserved. Shame, though. That was Iris Chen, who ran the general store, one of the few voices in town that didn't drip with cruelty. He didn't bother nobody. Didn't help nobody either, Dalton said. Man wants to live alone, he dies alone. That's the deal. Rhea's jaw clenched. She'd heard that one before, too. The unspoken contract people made up to justify abandonment. If you don't fit in, you don't deserve help. If you don't play by our rules, you're on your own. Still, Tommy tried again, bless him. If there's a chance, there ain't. Dalton's chair scraped back. He stood, and the room gave him space the way it always did. Not respect. Fear dressed up as respect. And even if there was, who the hell's gonna go? You? Tommy went red, shook his head. Didn't think so. Dalton's gaze swept the room. Anyone else want to volunteer for a suicide mission? Silence. Rhea felt it settle like snow. Heavy. Cold. Final. She should have kept her mouth shut. Should have finished her coffee and gone home to her small house at the edge of town where she kept chickens and a garden and didn't bother anyone. But her mother's voice echoed in her head, the last thing she'd said before she died. Don't let them make you small, baby. Don't you ever let them. Rhea stood. The scrape of her chair was louder than it should have been. Every head turned. She met the sheriff's eyes. I'll go. For a moment nobody spoke, then Dalton laughed. It started low, rolled into something mean. You? Me? You can't be serious. I am. Girl. He said it like an insult, like her size made her less of a woman and more of a punchline. You'd be dead before you made it halfway up. Maybe. This ain't a joke. I'm not laughing. Pete leaned forward, his face twisting into something ugly. Rhea, come on. You can barely make it up the hill to the church without stopping to catch your breath. A few men snickered. Heat crawled up her neck, but she didn't sit down. You don't know what you're talking about, someone else added. Sarah Drummond, who taught at the schoolhouse and had never once looked Rhea in the eye. That mountain's no place for someone like you. Someone like you. Rhea had heard every version of that phrase. Fat, slow, weak, useless. I've made it up worse, Rhea said quietly. When? Dalton's tone was pure disbelief. Last spring, when the Petersons' kid got lost near Ridgeback Pass. That was different. How? Wasn't a blizzard, He gestured vaguely at her. You got lucky. I got the kid back. Barely. still counts. Dalton's expression hardened. This is different, and you know it. Mercer's cabin is 8 miles up switchbacks in waist-deep snow. Temperatures dropping below zero. Wind will rip you right off the trail. Then I'd better be careful. You'll die. Maybe I will. Rhea's voice didn't shake. But at least I'll have tried. For what? Dalton stepped closer. For some hermit who don't give a damn about this town, who walked away from all of us? For someone who's still a person, Rhea said. Last I checked, that's supposed to mean something. Not when it's suicide. You don't know that. I know you. Dalton's voice dropped, vicious now. I know what you can and can't do. And this ain't in you. The room was watching, waiting. Some faces wore pity, others wore satisfaction. Rhea felt the weight of it, the expectation that she'd back down, apologize, know her place. But something in her had cracked a long time ago, or maybe it had never been whole to begin with. I'm going, she said. No, you're not. You can't stop me. I'm the sheriff. I can do whatever the hell I want. Then arrest me. She met his glare without flinching. Or get out of my way. The silence stretched. Dalton's face went dark. For a second, she thought he might actually grab her, haul her out, make an example. But Iris stood up. Let her go, John. Stay out of this. She's a grown woman. She can make her own choices. She's making a stupid choice. Maybe. Iris's voice was calm, steady. But it's hers to make. Dalton's jaw worked. He looked around the room, searching for backup. Found it in most faces. But not all. Tommy was staring at the floor. Pete looked uncomfortable. Even Sarah had gone quiet. Fine. Dalton stepped back. Go. Kill yourself. But when we find your frozen corpse in a ditch, don't expect me to cry about it. Rhea nodded once, turned toward the door. Wait. She stopped. Iris was pulling on her coat. You'll need supplies. Come on. The general store was quieter than the tavern. Warmer, too. Iris moved through the aisles with practiced efficiency, pulling items and stacking them on the counter. Rope, flint, a tin of salve, dried meat wrapped in cloth. You don't have to do this, Ace, Rhea said. I know. I can pay. Shut up. Iris didn't look at her. You're going to need warmer gloves. Those ones you got are garbage. Rhea watched her work, felt something tight in her chest loosen just slightly. Why are you helping me? She asked. Iris paused, her hand stilled on a package of bandages. Because I'm tired, she said finally. Tired of watching people get left behind because they don't look the way this town thinks they should. Tired of pretending that's normal. She looked up, met Rhea's eyes. And because I think you might actually pull this off. Rhea wasn't sure she believed that, but it helped to hear it. Thank you. Iris nodded, pushed the pile toward her. Don't thank me yet. You got 8 miles of hell ahead of you. I know. You got a gun? No. Knife? Yes. Good. Keep it sharp. Mountain lions don't care how brave you are. Iris pulled a small leather satchel from under the counter. This is laudanum. If Mercer's hurt bad, it'll help with the pain. Don't use too much or you'll put him under permanent. Rhea took it carefully. You know what you're doing? Iris asked. Medically, I mean. I've patched up enough animals. Can't be that different. It's a lot different. Then I'll figure it out. Iris studied her for a long moment. Then she reached out and gripped Rhea's shoulder. Not gently, firm, real. Come back, she said. You hear me? Come back. Rhea swallowed hard, nodded. The stable smelled like hay and manure and the warm bulk of horses shifting in their stalls. Rhea's mare, a sturdy gray named Dust, huffed when she approached. Yeah, I know, Rhea murmured, stroking her neck. I'm asking a lot. Dust had been her mother's horse, old now, steady, not the fastest, but reliable in the ways that mattered. Rhea saddled her with care, checking every strap twice, loaded the supplies into the saddlebags, tied down the bedroll. Her hands were shaking. She told herself it was the cold. Outside, the wind howled. Snow swirled in the dim light of the lanterns. The temperature had already dropped so low her breath came out in sharp white bursts. 8 miles. She'd done longer rides, but never in this. Never alone. "Ready?" she whispered. Dust snorted. "Me neither." She led the horse out into the storm. The first mile wasn't bad. The trail was still visible. The snow hadn't drifted too deep yet. Dust picked her way forward with careful steps, and Rhea kept her head down, focusing on the rhythm of movement. One step, then another. The wind bit at her face. Her fingers ached inside the new gloves Iris had given her, but she kept going. By the second mile, visibility dropped to almost nothing. The world became white noise. Howling wind, stinging ice, the faint dark shapes of trees barely visible through the storm. Rhea's thighs burned from gripping the saddle. Her back ached. Her face had gone numb. She thought about Dalton's words. "You'll die." Maybe he was right, but she'd spent her whole life being told what she couldn't do. Couldn't run as fast, couldn't climb as high, couldn't be loved the same way, and she'd survived all of it. This was just another thing people said she couldn't do. By the third mile, the trail disappeared entirely. Rhea had to trust memory. The faint landmarks she'd noticed on previous trips. The shape of a boulder. The angle of a ridge. Dust stumbled once, caught herself, kept going. "Good girl Rhea breathed. "Just a little further." She had no idea if that was true. The fourth mile broke her. Not physically. Physically, she was still moving, still upright, but something inside her cracked under the weight of exhaustion and cold, and the sheer impossibility of what she was trying to do. She'd been riding for hours. The storm wasn't letting up. Her body screamed for rest. And the worst part, the part that dug in like claws, was the voice in her head that sounded exactly like Dalton. "What the hell are you doing? You think you're a hero? You think this matters? He's probably already dead. You're gonna die for nothing." Rhea stopped Dust, sat there in the howling white, breathing hard. She could turn back. No one would blame her. They'd say she tried. That would be enough. Except it wouldn't. Because she'd know. She'd know she quit. And every time someone looked at her, every time someone made a comment about her body or her worth, she'd remember the moment she proved them right. Don't let them make you small. Rhea closed her eyes, felt the sting of tears freeze on her lashes. Then she urged Dust forward. The fifth mile nearly killed them both. The trail, what was left of it, cut along the side of a ridge. Narrow, icy, a sheer drop on one side that vanished into white nothing. Dust's hooves slipped. Once, twice, Rhea's heart hammered so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. "Easy," she whispered. "Easy, girl." But there was nothing easy about it. They inched forward, every step a negotiation with gravity and luck. Halfway across, the wind hit them like a fist. Dust reared. Not much, just enough. Her back hoof slipped. For one terrible second, Rhea felt the world tilt, felt the pull of the drop. Then Dust lunged forward, found purchase, scrambled onto solid ground. Rhea's breath came in ragged gasps. Her hands were locked so tight on the reins, her knuckles had gone white. "Jesus," she whispered, then louder, "Jesus Christ." She didn't believe in prayer, but she believed in fear, and she was afraid, not of dying. She'd made peace with that possibility miles ago, but of failing, of Cade Mercer dying alone, because she wasn't strong enough, fast enough, good enough. You're not good enough. She'd heard that her whole life. Maybe it was true, but she was all he had, so she kept going. Chance. By the 6th mile, she couldn't feel her feet. Her face was a mask of ice. Her lungs burned with every breath. But through the storm, she saw it. A shape. Dark. Solid. The cabin. Relief hit her so hard she almost fell off the horse. "We made it," she rasped. "Dust, we—" The cabin door was open. Snow had drifted inside, and there was blood on the threshold. Rhea slid off Dust, her legs nearly buckling. She grabbed the saddlebags, pulled out the knife, and stumbled toward the cabin. "Mercer?" Her voice cracked. "Cade Mercer?" No answer. She stepped inside. The cabin was small. One room, a fireplace full of cold ash. Furniture overturned, and in the corner, crumpled against the wall, a man. Barely recognizable as one. His clothes were shredded. His face was a mess of cuts and bruises, one eye swollen shut. His left arm was bent at a wrong angle, and his breathing came in shallow, rattling gasps. Blood pooled beneath him, dark. Too much. Rhea's stomach lurched. She'd seen animals mauled before, had put down a horse once after a bad fall. But this was different. This was a person. And he was dying. "Cade," she said, dropping to her knees beside him. "Cade, can you hear me?" His good eye cracked open, focused on her with difficulty. "Who?" "My name's Rhea. I came from town. You're hurt bad, but I'm going to help you." He made a sound. Might have been a laugh. Might have been a sob. Too late. "No." She pulled out the supplies, hands shaking. "No, it's not. I didn't ride 8 miles through hell to watch you die. So you're going to stay with me. You hear? You're going to stay." She didn't know what she was doing, but she started anyway. The bandages, the salve, the laudanum. His wounds were deep, claw marks across his chest. His arm was definitely broken, maybe a rib or two. She worked as fast as she could, tried to remember everything she'd learned from patching up livestock. From the one winter her mother had gotten sick and Rhea had nursed her through it. It wasn't enough, but it had to be. "Hurts," Cade breathed. "I know." She wrapped his arm as carefully as she could. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." He passed out somewhere in the middle of it. Maybe that was a mercy. Rhea kept working. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time had stopped meaning anything. When she finally sat back, her hands were covered in blood. Her whole body ached. But Cade was still breathing, shallow, uneven, but breathing. She built a fire, fed dust, melted snow for water. Then she collapsed beside Cade, too exhausted to move. Outside, the storm raged on. Inside, 2 people who'd been written off by the world clung to life in the dark. And somewhere deep in Rhea's chest, beneath the fear and the exhaustion and the pain, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Purpose. She woke to the sound of voices. Men's voices. Outside. Rhea's eyes snapped open. Pain shot through her body as she tried to sit up. Every muscle screamed. The fire had burned down to embers. Pale gray light filtered through the window. Dawn, maybe. The storm had quieted. Cade was still unconscious beside her. His breathing was steadier now. Not good, but better. The voices grew louder. "Tracks lead here. Dead by now." Rhea forced herself to her feet, grabbed her knife, moved to the window. Through the frost-covered glass, she saw them. 4 men on horseback. Sheriff Dalton in the lead. Her heart sank. They hadn't come to help. The way Dalton sat in his saddle, tense, angry, told her everything she needed to know. This wasn't a rescue. This was something else. The door slammed open. Dalton filled the frame, his face hard as winter stone. His eyes swept the cabin, landed on Cade, then on Rhea. "Well," he said slowly, "looks like you didn't die after all." "No thanks to you," Rhea said. His mouth twitched, not quite a smile. "You shouldn't have come up here. He was dying. He's a thief." The words hit like a slap. "What?" "Cade Mercer." Dalton stepped inside, his men filing in behind him. "Wanted for robbery. Been hiding up here for months." "That's not—" "McCready's store was hit 2 weeks ago. $300. We got a witness who saw Mercer in town that night." Rhea's mind raced. "Who?" "Don't matter who. Matters that it's true." "It's not. You calling me a liar? I'm saying you're wrong." Dalton's expression darkened. "Girl, you got no idea what you're talking about. This man's a criminal, and you just wasted a night saving him." "I saved a person," Rhea shot back. "You decided he was guilty without a trial." "Don't need a trial when we got evidence." "What evidence?" "Witness testimony, boot prints, timing." "That's not evidence. That's convenience." One of the men laughed. "She thinks she's a lawyer now." Dalton raised a hand. The laughter stopped. "Here's what's going to happen," he said, his voice cold. "We're taking Mercer back to town. He'll stand trial. And you're going to go home and forget this ever happened." "No." "That wasn't a question. I'm not leaving him. You don't have a choice." "I do." Rhea stepped between Dalton and Cade. "And I'm making it." Dalton's patience cracked. "Move, or I'll move you." Try it. For a long moment, they stood there, the cabin silent except for the crackle of dying embers and Cade's labored breathing. Then Dalton's hand moved to his belt, to the gun holstered there. Last chance, he said quietly. Rhea didn't move. Dalton drew, and everything changed. The gun stayed in Dalton's hand, not quite pointed at her, but close enough that the threat was clear. Rhea's pulse hammered in her ears, but she didn't step back. Couldn't. Because the moment she did, Cade was as good as dead. You're making a mistake, Wilson, Dalton said, his voice low and dangerous. So are you. Behind him, the other men shifted. Pete Garvin cracked his knuckles. The other two, Marcus Webb and a younger deputy Rhea didn't know by name, looked uncomfortable but didn't intervene. This ain't about you, Dalton continued. This is about justice, law, things that keep a town from falling apart. Justice? Rhea's laugh was bitter. You already decided he's guilty. That's not justice. That's a lynching with extra steps. Pete stepped forward. Watch your mouth. Or what? You gonna shoot me too? Nobody's shooting anybody, Dalton said, though his grip on the gun didn't loosen. But I ain't letting you stand between me and a criminal. Then you'll have to go through me. The silence that followed was heavy enough to crack stone. Dalton's jaw worked. She could see the calculation in his eyes. How far was he willing to go? How bad would it look if he dragged her out by force? You know what they'll say about you? He asked quietly. When word gets out you protected a thief, you'll be worse than nothing. You'll be a traitor. I've been called worse. Not like this. This will stick. This will follow you. Let it. His expression hardened. You're a damn fool. Maybe, but I'm a fool who's not moving. For a moment she thought he'd actually pull the trigger. His finger twitched on the guard. His eyes went cold. Then Cade groaned. The sound was weak, barely audible, but it cut through the tension like a knife. All eyes turned to him. He was awake, barely. His good eye cracked open, unfocused and glassy with pain. The hell? His voice was a rasp, broken. Is this... Cade Mercer, Dalton said, stepping around Rhea. You're under arrest for robbery. Cade's eye found him. Confusion flickered across his battered face. What? McCready's store 2 weeks ago. $300. Wasn't me. We got a witness says otherwise. Witness is lying. That's for a jury to decide. Cade tried to sit up, gasped, fell back. His face went gray. Can't. Even stand. Then we'll carry you. You'll kill him, Rhea cut in. Look at him. He's barely alive. You move him now. He won't make it halfway down the mountain. Not my problem. It will be when you have to explain why you dragged a dying man to his death. Dalton's face flushed. I don't answer to you. You answer to the town, and they'll ask questions. You know they will. She was bluffing, mostly. The town would probably nod along with whatever Dalton said, but there was a sliver of doubt in his eyes now. A crack. He needs time, Rhea pressed. A day. Maybe 2. Let me stabilize him. Then you can take him. So you can help him escape? Where's he gonna go? He can't walk, can barely breathe. I'm not asking for a pardon. I'm asking for basic humanity. Pete snorted. Humanity. That's rich coming from someone defending a crook. I'm defending a person who hasn't been proven guilty of anything. You really believe he's innocent? Marcus asked. He sounded genuinely curious. I believe he deserves a fair shot, Rhea said. Same as anyone. Dalton holstered his gun. The relief Rhea felt was short-lived. Fine, he said. You got 48 hours, 2 days. After that, we're taking him, alive or dead. That's the deal. Take it or leave it. Rhea bit back the words she wanted to say. It wasn't enough time. Not nearly. But it was better than nothing. 2 days, she agreed. And you stay here with him. Don't even think about running. I won't. Dalton stepped closer, his face inches from hers. She could smell tobacco and sweat. If you're lying to me, if you help him in any way, I'll make sure you never work, never eat, never exist in this town again. You understand? I understand. He held her gaze a moment longer, then turned and walked out. The others followed. The door slammed shut. Rhea's legs gave out. She sank to the floor, her whole body shaking. Why? Cade's voice was so faint she almost missed it. She looked at him. His eye was still open, watching her. Why what? Why help me? Good question. She didn't have a good answer. Because nobody else would, she said finally. He made a sound that might have been a laugh. Might have been a cough. Stupid reason. Yeah, probably. Gonna get yourself killed. Not planning on it. Plans don't matter. Up here. He was right about that. Rhea forced herself to stand. Checked his bandages. The bleeding had slowed, but his color was still bad. His breathing shallow. You need water, she said. Need a miracle. Fresh out of those. Water's the best I can do. She melted snow over the fire, brought him a cup. He drank slowly, wincing with every swallow. What'd they say? I did. Robbed McCready's store. $300. Didn't. I know. How? Because if you were a thief, you'd be long gone by now. Not living alone in a cabin barely big enough to turn around in. He closed his eye. Bear. What? Bear got me. Thought I was dead. What were you doing? Checking traps. Saw tracks. Followed them. That was stupid. He drifted off again. Rhea let him. Sleep was probably the best thing for him right now. She stoked the fire, checked on dust, then sat down with her back against the wall. 2 days. She had 2 days to prove Cade's innocence, or at least cast enough doubt that Dalton couldn't railroad him into a noose. The problem was she had no idea how to do that. She wasn't a detective, wasn't a lawyer. Hell, she could barely read the town ledger without getting a headache. But she'd made a promise. To herself, if not to Cade. And she didn't break promises. Outside, the wind picked up again. Snow began to fall. Not as heavy as before, but steady. Rhea closed her eyes and tried to think. The robbery happened 2 weeks ago. McCready's store. $300. Who was the witness? Dalton hadn't said. Probably someone convenient. Someone willing to point a finger for the right price. And why Cade? He'd been gone from town for 5 years. Barely spoke to anyone. What reason would he have to rob a store? Unless it wasn't about reason. Unless it was about convenience. A scapegoat. Someone easy to blame. Someone nobody would defend. Just like her. Rhea's eyes opened. That was it. Dalton wasn't trying to catch a thief, he was trying to close a case. And Cade was the easiest target, which meant the real thief was still out there. And probably laughing. She needed proof. Evidence. Something concrete. But how the hell was she supposed to find that stuck in a cabin with a half-dead man and a sheriff who wanted both of them gone? The answer came in the form of hoofbeats. Rhea tensed, grabbed her knife, moved to the window. A single rider approached through the snow. Small frame. Familiar. Iris. Rhea opened the door before she could knock. What are you doing here? Iris dismounted, pulling a pack off her horse. Bringing supplies and information. Dalton know you're here? Dalton can go to hell! Despite everything, Rhea smiled. Iris stepped inside, shaking snow from her coat. Her eyes swept the cabin, landed on Cade. How is he? Alive. Barely. That's better than I expected. Iris unpacked the supplies, more bandages, food, a bottle of something that smelled medicinal. Drink this. You look like death. Thanks. I mean it. When's the last time you ate? Rhea couldn't remember. Iris shoved bread and dried meat into her hands. Eat. Then we talk. Rhea ate. The food tasted like sawdust, but her body needed it. Dalton gave me 2 days, she said between bites. I heard. You heard? Whole town heard. He came back bragging about it. Said you made a fool of yourself. Sounds about right. Iris sat down across from her. There's more. The witness? It's Danny Cryer. Rhea frowned. The trapper? Yeah, he's a drunk. He's a drunk who owes Dalton money, a lot of it. Understanding clicked into place. Dalton paid him to lie. Can't prove it, but yeah, probably. Where's Danny now? Pulled up at the tavern, been drinking steady since the robbery. Says he's scared Mercer's going to come after him. That's convenient. Isn't it?
Rhea's mind raced. If I can get Danny to recant, you can't. Dalton's got him locked down tight.
Won't let anyone talk to him without supervision. Then I need to find the real thief. In 2 days? While stuck up here? You got a better idea? Iris was quiet for a moment. Then she reached into her coat and pulled out a folded piece of paper. This showed up at the store yesterday, slipped under the door. Rhea unfolded it. The handwriting was shaky but legible. The sheriff is lying. Check the lockbox. Who wrote this? Don't know. No signature. Could be a trap. Could be? Or could be someone with a conscience. Rhea stared at the note. What lockbox? Dalton keeps one in his office. Personal. Nobody's allowed to touch it. You think the money's in there? I think if it is, it means Dalton's involved. The implication settled over them like a shroud. If Dalton had the money, he wasn't just corrupt. He was the thief. And he was framing Cade to cover it up. I need to see that lockbox, Rhea said. You can't. You're stuck here. And even if you weren't, breaking into the sheriff's office is suicide. Then you do it, Iris laughed. You're insane. Probably, but you're the only person I trust. I'm not a thief. Neither am I, but sometimes you gotta break rules to get to the truth. Iris stared at her, then at the note, then back at her. If I get caught, you won't. You don't know that. No, but I believe in you. Iris closed her eyes, sighed. I'm gonna regret this. Probably. When do you need it done? Tonight, before Dalton realizes you're helping me. Tonight. Iris stood. You're really asking me to break into the sheriff's office, crack open his lockbox, and find evidence that could get us both killed? Yeah. And you think this'll work? I think it's the only shot we've got. Iris looked at Cade's unconscious form, then at Rhea. All right, but if I die, I'm haunting you. Deal. Iris left as quietly as she'd come. The cabin felt colder without her. Rhea sat back down beside Cade. His breathing had evened out slightly, still weak, but steady. You hearing any of this? She asked quietly. No response. Good, because it's probably better you don't know how insane this plan is. She checked his wounds again, changed the bandages, gave him more water. Then she waited. Hours crawled by. The fire crackled. Snow fell. Cade slept. And Rhea sat in the dark, watching the door, praying Iris wouldn't get caught. When the knock finally came, it was past midnight. Rhea's heart leapt. She opened the door. Iris stood there, covered in snow, her face pale. Did you? Iris held up a leather pouch, heavy, clinking. Rhea's breath caught. $300, Iris said. Exactly. They stood there in the doorway, the weight of what they'd just uncovered settling between them. He did it, Rhea whispered. Dalton stole the money and framed Cade. Looks like it. We have proof. We have stolen evidence. There's a difference. It's still proof. That we obtained illegally by breaking into the sheriff's office. You really think the town's going to side with us over Dalton? Rhea's stomach sank. Iris was right. Even with the money, Dalton could spin this, say they planted it, say they were lying. Then what do we do? I don't know, but we better figure it out fast, because when Dalton realizes that money's gone, he's coming up here. And he's not going to be in a talking mood. Rhea looked back at Cade, still unconscious, still helpless. We need a witness, she said slowly. Someone who saw what really happened. Who? I don't know, but someone knows something. People always know something. Iris hesitated. There might be someone. Who? Jacob Mills. He works at the livery. Quiet guy. Keeps to himself. But he was working late the night of the robbery, right across from McCready's store. You think he saw something? I think it's worth asking. Can you get to him? Maybe, if I'm careful. Do it. And Iris, yeah? Thank you for all of this. Iris's expression softened. Don't thank me yet. We're a long way from safe. She left again, disappearing into the night. Rhea locked the door, sat down, stared at the pouch of money sitting on the table like a ticking bomb. This was bigger than she'd thought, bigger than a simple robbery. Dalton wasn't just corrupt. He was dangerous, and now she'd made herself his enemy. What I miss? Rhea's head snapped up. Cade was awake, watching her. How long have you been listening? Long enough. Sheriff's dirty. Yeah. You're in trouble. We're both in trouble. He tried to shift, winced. Should have left me. To die. Too late for that now. Not too late. To run. I'm not running. Why not? Because I'm tired of running. Tired of letting people like Dalton decide who matters and who doesn't. Cade studied her with his one good eye. You're stubborn. You're not the first person to notice. Gonna get you killed, so you keep saying. He almost smiled. Almost. What's the plan? Prove you're innocent. Expose Dalton. Don't die. That's a bad plan. You got a better one? No. Then we're sticking with mine. He closed his eye again, but this time he looked less like he was dying and more like he was just exhausted. Thank you, he said quietly. Rhea didn't know what to say to that, so she just nodded. The night stretched on. Rhea dozed in fits and starts, jerking awake at every sound. When dawn finally broke, pale and cold, there was another knock at the door. Rhea grabbed her knife. Who is it? It's me. Iris's voice strained. Rhea opened the door. Iris stumbled inside. Her lip was split. Blood trickled from her nose. What happened? Dalton knows about the money, about Jacob. Rhea's blood went cold. How? Someone saw me at the livery, told him. Where's Jacob? Dead. The word hung in the air like a death sentence. What? Shot. They're saying it was an accident, cleaning his gun. But I saw the body, Rhea. That wasn't an accident. Rhea's hand shook. Dalton killed him. Probably had one of his men do it. But yeah. Because he talked to you. Because he knew the truth. Guilt crashed over Rhea like a wave. Jacob was dead because of her. Because she'd pushed. Because she'd refused to let it go. I'm sorry, she whispered. Don't. This isn't on you. This is on Dalton. But if you hadn't, Cade would still be a scapegoat and Dalton would still be a murderer. At least now we know. Knowing doesn't help if we can't prove it. Iris wiped blood from her face. Jacob talked before he died, told me what he saw. What? The night of the robbery, he saw two men leaving McCready's store. One of them was Marcus Webb. Rhea's heart stuttered. Dalton's deputy. Yeah, and the other was Dalton himself. He saw them. Clear as day. They didn't think anyone was watching. Why didn't he say anything? Same reason most people don't. Fear. Dalton runs this town. Going against him is suicide. But he told you. He was dying. Didn't have anything left to lose. Iris's voice cracked. He made me promise I'd tell someone, so I'm telling you. Rhea's mind raced. This was it. The proof they needed. Eyewitness testimony from a dying man. But Jacob was dead. And without him, it was just Iris's word against Dalton's. We need more, Rhea said. We need someone else who saw it. Someone who'll go on record. There is no one else. Jacob was alone. Then we use the money. Show people what we found. And admit we broke into Dalton's office. They'll arrest us. Let them. At least it'll raise questions. Questions aren't enough. Dalton will bury this, and us with it. Rhea slammed her fist against the wall. Pain shot up her arm. She welcomed it. There has to be something, she said. Some way to prove he did it. Cade's voice cut through the argument. The ledger. Both women turned to him. What ledger? Rhea asked. McCready keeps records of every transaction, inventory, deposits. So? So if Dalton stole 300, the numbers won't match. Understanding dawned. The books will show a discrepancy. If he didn't doctor them, yeah. Iris frowned. McCready's meticulous. He wouldn't just let that slide. Unless Dalton convinced him it was a mistake, Rhea said, or threatened him into silence. Either way, the original ledger should still show the loss. Do you think McCready would testify? I think he'd do whatever keeps him alive. Rhea turned to Iris. Can you get to him? Maybe. But Dalton's watching everyone now. If I'm seen, then don't be seen. Iris laughed. It was hollow. You make it sound easy. It's not. But it's all we've got. Iris looked at Cade, then at Rhea, then at her own bruised and bloodied hands. All right, one more time. But this is it. After this, I'm done. Fair enough. Iris left again. The cabin felt emptier each time. Rhea sank down beside Cade. You should rest. Should you? Can't. Too much to do. Like what? Like keeping you alive, like figuring out how to take down a corrupt sheriff with no allies and no leverage. When you put it that way, yeah. They sat in silence for a while. The fire popped. Wind rattled the shutters. Why'd you really come? Cade asked finally. Rhea didn't answer right away. Because I was tired of being invisible, she said eventually. Tired of people looking through me, or at me like I'm something broken. You're not broken. I know, but try telling them that. They're idiots. Most people are. He almost laughed. Fair point. What about you? Rhea asked. Why'd you leave town? Cade was quiet for so long she thought he'd passed out again, then lost someone. Couldn't stay. I'm sorry. Was a long time ago. Doesn't make it hurt less. No, it doesn't. They didn't talk after that, just sat together in the kind of silence that didn't need filling. When Iris returned hours later, her face was grim. McCready won't talk, she said. He's too scared. But I got the ledger. She pulled a worn notebook from her coat, flipped it open. There, in neat handwriting, was the record. $300. Missing. No explanation. This is it, Rhea breathed. This proves the money was stolen. It proves money went missing, Iris corrected. It doesn't prove Dalton took it. But combined with the money in his lockbox, that we stole. And Jacob's testimony, from a dead man, Rhea wanted to scream. So what do we do? Iris closed the ledger. We make Dalton confess. How? I don't know yet, but we've got 1 day left. And if we don't figure something out by then, you and Cade are both dead. Rhea looked at the man she'd saved, the man who'd become more than just a stranger in the snow. Then we better get creative, she said. And despite everything, despite the fear and the exhaustion and the impossible odds, Rhea felt something dangerous bloom in her chest. Hope. The plan they came up with was half desperation, half madness, and Rhea knew it. But desperate times had a way of making mad ideas seem reasonable. You want to do what? Cade asked, his voice stronger now, but still rough around the edges. Bring you to town, Rhea repeated, before Dalton comes back up here. That's suicide. Staying here is suicide. At least this way we control the timing. Iris paced the small cabin, her boots leaving tracks in the dirt floor. The space felt smaller with 3 people in it, the walls pressing in. She's right. If we wait for Dalton, we're playing his game. We need to flip the board. By walking into a town that already thinks I'm guilty? Cade shifted against the wall, grimacing. That's not flipping the board, that's jumping off a cliff. We have evidence, Rhea said. The money. The ledger. Jacob's testimony through Iris. Circumstantial at best. Dalton's word against ours. And his word carries weight. So we make people listen. Make them see what he really is. How? Cade's eye fixed on her, sharp despite the pain he was clearly in. You think people care about truth? They care about comfort. And believing Dalton keeps them comfortable. Rhea felt the words land like stones. Because he was right. She'd seen it her whole life, people choosing convenient lies over uncomfortable truths, choosing to believe what made their lives easier rather than what was real. But she'd also seen something else. Small moments when truth cracked through. When someone like Iris chose to help. When Tommy Vance looked ashamed in the tavern instead of joining the laughter. Not everyone was lost. There are good people in that town, she said slowly. Scared people, maybe, but good. Scared people do bad things. They can also do brave things, if someone shows them how. Cade studied her for a long moment. His face was still a mess of bruises, yellow and purple fading to sickly green at the edges. But his eye was clear, sharp. You really believe that? I have to. Iris stopped pacing.
Even if we convince people, Dalton's not going to just confess. He'll fight. And he's got guns. He's got men. We've got what? A stolen pouch and a dead witness? So we make sure we're not alone, Rhea said. We do this public, in front of everyone. Force his hand. Where? The tavern? That worked so well last time. The church. Both of them stared at her. The church? Iris repeated, like she'd misheard. Sunday service. Whole town will be there, including Dalton. That's 2 days away. We've got 1 day left on Dalton's deadline. We leave tonight, rest at my place tomorrow, then Sunday morning we walk in during service. Walk in and say what exactly? Kate asked. Excuse me, folks, sorry to interrupt your prayers, but your sheriff's a thief and a murderer? Something like that. Yeah. They'll throw us out. Maybe. Or maybe they'll listen. And when Dalton pulls his gun, Rhea's jaw set. Then people will see exactly who he is, see what he's willing to do to protect his lies. The silence that followed was heavy with doubt, and something else, a fragile, dangerous thing that might have been hope. Iris rubbed her face with both hands. This is insane. Probably. We could all die. We could die anyway. But you really think it'll work? Rhea met her eyes, saw the exhaustion there, the fear, but also the determination. I think it's the only shot we've got, and I think doing nothing guarantees we lose. Iris looked at Cade. What do you say? He was quiet for a long time. His fingers traced the bandages wrapped around his ribs, the makeshift sling holding his arm. He looked like hell, worse than hell, but his eye was clear and his voice was steady when he spoke. I say if we're going to die anyway, might as well make it count. Iris laughed. It was sharp and a little desperate. You're both crazy, you know that? You coming or not? Someone's got to keep you idiots alive. She grabbed her coat from the peg by the door. I'll head back now. Start spreading word that something big's happening Sunday. Get people curious. Plant seeds. Be careful, Rhea said. Careful's not going to cut it anymore. Iris paused at the door, her hand on the frame. Snow had started falling again outside, light flurries dancing in the wind. But I'll try not to get myself killed before Sunday. That's all I ask. After she left, the cabin felt emptier, colder. Rhea stoked the fire, added more wood. The flames crackled and popped. Cade watched her work. Can you ride? She asked without turning around. Can I ride or will I ride are different questions. Can you stay on a horse for 8 miles without falling off or dying? He considered. The silence stretched. If I don't pass out from the pain, probably. That's not reassuring. It's honest. She turned to face him. We don't have to do this. You could stay here. I could go down alone, make the case without you. And let you take all the risk? After you saved my life? It's not about keeping score. No. But it's about what's right. And hiding while you fight my battle isn't right. Rhea helped him sit up straighter. Every movement made him bite back sounds of pain. His broken arm was splinted and tied tight to his chest. His ribs were wrapped in strips of cloth she'd torn from her spare shirt. But he managed to get upright, managed to look her in the eye. You don't have to do this, he said quietly. Yeah, I do. Why? She'd been asking herself the same question. The easy answer was that it was the right thing, the noble thing. But it was more than that, deeper. Because I'm tired of people like Dalton deciding who deserves dignity, she said. Tired of watching them get away with it because everyone's too scared to fight back. Tired of being invisible unless I'm useful. You're not invisible. I was, until I made myself impossible to ignore. You think that's what this is? Making yourself seen? Maybe. Or maybe it's just refusing to disappear. Cade's mouth twitched, almost a smile. Anger's a good fuel. Burns hot. Fast, too. Gotta be careful it doesn't burn you up with it. I'll take that risk. They packed what little they had. Rhea gathered her supplies, what was left of the food, the medical supplies, the rope. She loaded everything into the saddlebags with methodical care, checking and rechecking. Cade watched from the doorway, one hand braced against the frame. You're scared. It wasn't a question. Terrified, she admitted. Good. Means you're not stupid. Just crazy?
Little bit of both. She helped him outside. The cold hit them like a physical force. The temperature had dropped even further. Their breath came out in white clouds that hung in the air before dissolving. Dust stood waiting, patient as always. The mare huffed when she saw them, her breath steaming. Rhea loaded the supplies, then turned to help Cade mount. "This is going to hurt," she warned. "Everything hurts. At this point, it's just degrees." She boosted him up. He went gray, his face draining of color, swayed in the saddle. For a second, she thought he'd pass out, thought she'd have to catch him. But he gripped the saddle horn with his good hand, held on. "You all right?" "No, but I'm up." Rhea climbed up behind him. The saddle wasn't meant for two. It was tight, uncomfortable. But she wrapped an arm around his waist to steady him and took the reins with her other hand. "Hold on," she said. "Not much choice." They started down the mountain as the sun began to set. The descent was harder than the climb had been. The trail was treacherous with ice. Every jolt made Cade tense. She could feel it through her arm around his waist, the way his muscles went rigid with pain. But he didn't complain, just held on and breathed through it. Rhea kept her focus on the path ahead, one step at a time. Don't look at the drop-off to the left. Don't think about how easy it would be to slip. Just focus on the next step, and the next. The light was fading fast. Shadows stretched across the trail. The temperature dropped further. Halfway down, Cade spoke. His voice was rough, strained. "Why'd you really come up here?" "I told you." "No, you gave me the noble reason. I want the real one." Rhea was quiet for a moment. The truth was complicated, messy, not the kind of thing she usually said out loud. "My whole life people have looked at me like I'm less," she said finally, "like my body tells them everything they need to know about who I am, what I can do, what I'm worth." "So you came up here to prove them wrong?" "No, I came up here because I was tired of needing to prove anything, tired of my existence being a debate, tired of walking into rooms and watching people decide I'm not worth their time before I even open my mouth." Cade didn't respond right away. When he did, his voice was soft. "That's a better reason." "You think?" "Yeah, spite's powerful, but self-respect's stronger." They rode in silence after that. The trees thinned as they descended. Through the gaps, Rhea could see the town below. Smoke rising from chimneys, lights flickering in windows. It looked peaceful from here. Safe. She knew better. The darkness was complete by the time they reached the lower trail. Rhea had to trust dust to find the way. The mare picked her path carefully, her hooves crunching in the snow. Cade's weight had gotten heavier. He was leaning on her more, fighting to stay conscious. "Stay with me," Rhea said. "We're almost there." "How much further?" "Mile. Maybe less." "Feels like 10. I know, but you're doing good. Lying doesn't suit you." "I'm not lying. You're still on the horse. That's good." He made a sound that might have been a laugh, might have been a groan. They reached her house just as the moon rose. The small structure looked dark, abandoned. But it was hers. Home. She helped Cade down. He could barely stand. His legs buckled and she had to catch him, take his weight. "Sorry," he muttered. "Don't be. Just move." She got him inside, onto the bed. He collapsed like someone had cut his strings. "Sleep," she said, pulling a blanket over him. "I'll keep watch." "What if Dalton comes?" "Then we deal with it." "You need rest too." "I'll sleep when this is over." He wanted to argue. She could see it in his face, but exhaustion won. His eye closed, and within minutes his breathing evened out. Rhea sat by the window, her knife in her lap, watching the street outside. Hours crawled by. The town settled into night, quiet, dark, but Rhea couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, of eyes in the darkness. She must have dozed off despite herself, because she jerked awake to the sound of voices outside. Dawn light was creeping through the window. She'd slept sitting up, her neck stiff. The voices grew louder. Multiple people. Rhea moved to the window, knife in hand. A crowd had gathered outside her house. Not huge, maybe 15 people. But they were there, standing in the cold morning air, staring at her door. Iris stood at the front. Behind her, Tommy Vance. A few others Rhea recognized from the tavern. Some faces she didn't know. She opened the door. "What's going on?" "Word spread," Iris said. Her breath came out in white puffs. About Sunday. About what you're planning. How'd they... I might have mentioned it to a few people. Who mentioned it to a few more? You know how it goes. Tommy stepped forward. He looked nervous but determined. His hands were shoved deep in his coat pockets. Is it true? About Dalton? Rhea glanced at the faces watching her. Some curious, some suspicious, all of them waiting. Yeah, she said. It's true. You got proof? I do. Then show us. Rhea hesitated. This wasn't the plan. They were supposed to wait for Sunday, for the church, for everyone to be there at once. But these people were here now, asking, listening, and who knew if they'd still be willing to listen in 2 days. She went inside, grabbed the pouch of money and Macready's ledger, brought them out into the cold morning air. This, she said, holding up the pouch, is $300, the exact amount stolen from Macready's store. I found it in Sheriff Dalton's personal lockbox in his office. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. People leaned in to look. You broke into his office? Someone asked. A woman Rhea didn't recognize. Yes. That's illegal. So is framing an innocent man for your own crime. She opened the ledger, showed them the entry in Macready's careful handwriting, the missing $300, the discrepancy he'd never been able to explain. Jacob Mills saw Dalton and Marcus Webb leaving Macready's store the night of the robbery, Rhea continued. He told Iris what he saw before he died. Convenient he's dead, Pete Garvin said. He joined the crowd at some point, his arms crossed over his broad chest. Can't verify the story if he's in the ground. He was shot. Dalton called it an accident, said Jacob was cleaning his gun and it went off. Maybe it was an accident. Or maybe Dalton silenced a witness who could destroy him. You got any proof of that? Or just wild theories? Just the timing, and the fact that Jacob was scared enough to risk telling someone what he saw. And then he was dead less than 12 hours later. Pete shook his head. This is all circumstantial. You're asking us to believe the sheriff, our sheriff, is a thief and a murderer based on stolen evidence and a dead man's second-hand word. I'm asking you to look at the facts and decide for yourself what they mean. Facts can be twisted. So can people. That's my point. The crowd shifted, uncertain, torn between what they wanted to believe and what the evidence suggested. Tommy spoke up. What about Mercer? Where's he? Inside, recovering from the bear attack that nearly killed him. Can we see him? Rhea glanced back at the house. Cade was in no shape for this. Barely able to stand yesterday, probably worse this morning. But hiding him would only make things worse, would make it look like she was protecting something. Wait here. She went inside. Cade was awake, propped against the wall. He must have heard the voices. They want to see you, she said. How many? 15, maybe 20 now. Armed? Don't think so, but I can't be sure. He struggled to his feet. She helped him, supporting his weight as they moved toward the door. The crowd went quiet when they saw him. He looked worse in daylight. The bruises had darkened overnight. His face was a mess of purple and yellow, one eye still swollen shut. The way he held himself, hunched over his broken ribs, made him look smaller than he was. You're Cade Mercer, someone said. A young man Rhea didn't know. Yeah. You robbed Macready's store? No. Then who did? Dalton. Cade's voice was rough but steady. And Marcus Webb. They stole the money and needed someone to blame. I was convenient. How do you know it was them? Because I was on the mountain when it happened. Been on the mountain for months. Ask anyone who hunts up there. They'll tell you. I don't come down. Why not? Because I didn't want to. Still don't, if I'm being honest. Then why are you here now? Cade's eye found Rhea, held her gaze for a moment. Because she didn't give up on me. When the whole town did. When everyone else decided I wasn't worth the effort. When it would have been easier to let me die. That doesn't make you innocent. No. But it makes her worth listening to. And if you listen to her, really listen, you'll see the truth. The crowd was silent, processing. Some faces showed doubt. Others showed something that might have been understanding. Then a new voice cut through. Familiar. Unwelcome. This is quite the show. Rhea's stomach dropped. Dalton pushed through the crowd, Marcus and 2 other deputies flanking him. His face was calm, almost amused,
like he'd stumbled onto something entertaining rather than threatening. "Heard there was some kind of gathering," he said, his eyes sweeping the assembled people. "Thought I'd see what the fuss was about." "We're just talking," Iris said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Looks like more than talking." Dalton's eyes landed on the pouch and ledger in Rhea's hands. His expression didn't change, didn't even flicker. "That my property? It's evidence. Evidence you stole. Evidence you stole first. That's a serious accusation, Miss Calloway. It's the truth. Truth." Dalton smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "Funny thing about truth, it depends on who's telling it and who people choose to believe." He stepped closer. The crowd parted for him automatically. Years of conditioning, years of authority. "You know what I think?" he continued. "I think you're desperate. I think you broke into my office looking for anything you could use to save your friend, and you found money that was secured as evidence, and now you're trying to spin a story." "Jacob Mills saw you," Rhea said. "Jacob Mills is dead. Tragic accident. Convenient accident. Accidents happen, especially to people who handle firearms carelessly. You calling me a liar?" Dalton's expression hardened, just a fraction. "I'm calling you confused, mistaken, maybe well-intentioned, but definitely wrong. I'm calling you a thief and a murderer." The crowd gasped. The words hung in the cold air like smoke. Dalton's hand drifted toward his gun, not drawing it, just resting there. A reminder. "Careful, girl. Words like that carry weight. They can get you hurt. So does proof." "You don't have proof. You have stolen property and wild theories and the word of a criminal." "I have $300 that match the exact amount stolen. I have McReady's ledger showing the discrepancy. I have testimony from Jacob Mills through Iris. You have nothing that would stand up in any court. Maybe not, but we're not in court. We're here, in front of these people, and they can decide for themselves what to believe." Cade stepped forward. Moving hurt him. Rhea could see it in the way his face went tight, but he did it anyway. "You never searched my cabin, Dalton. Never found any evidence connecting me to the robbery, because there wasn't any to find. Didn't need to search it, got a tip about where you'd hidden the money. From who?" "Anonymous source." "How convenient," Cade said. The ghost of a smile touched his battered face. "Anonymous tips, anonymous notes, lots of mysterious, helpful people who don't exist. I don't have to explain my methods to you. No, but you should probably explain them to these people, the ones you're supposed to protect." Dalton's expression finally cracked. Anger flashed across his face. "I'm done playing games. You're both under arrest." "On what charge?" Rhea demanded. "Robbery, breaking and entering, obstructing justice, conspiracy. Take your pick. You can't. I can do whatever I want. I'm the law here." Tommy stepped forward. His voice shook, but he got the words out. "Sheriff, maybe we should stay out of this, boy. This doesn't concern you. But if there's even a chance they're telling the truth, there's no chance. Just a desperate woman and a criminal trying to weasel out of consequences." Iris moved to stand beside Rhea. "Then arrest me too, because I'm the one who broke into your office. I'm the one who found your stolen money. Your dirty secret." Dalton's eyes narrowed. "So you admit it?" "I admit I found evidence of your crime. Yeah. My evidence that you stole. Your lie. That I exposed." The tension was thick enough to cut. The crowd watched, caught between fear and fascination. This was better than anything they'd expected. Better than Sunday service could ever be. Dalton's hand closed on his gun. Not drawing, not yet, but close. "Last chance. Come quietly or come bleeding. Your choice." Rhea's heart hammered against her ribs. This was it. The moment everything either broke wide open or shattered completely. She met Dalton's eyes, saw the calculation there. He was weighing his options, how far he could push, what he could get away with in front of witnesses. And she realized something. He was scared too, not of her, not of the truth itself, of losing control, of people seeing him as something other than the authority figure he'd built himself into. "You're not going to shoot me," Rhea said quietly. "Try me. Not in front of all these people. Not when they're already asking questions. Not when it would prove everything we're saying. They'll believe whatever I tell them. Will they?" She looked at the crowd, really looked, saw doubt on some faces, curiosity on others. You all see this, right? See how desperate he is to silence us, to stop us from talking? Desperate? Dalton laughed, but it sounded forced. I'm doing my job, enforcing the law. Your job is to protect people, not frame them, not kill them when they threaten to expose you. I've never killed anyone. Jacob Mills would disagree. If he wasn't dead. Dalton drew his gun. The crowd scattered, shouts, screams, people diving for cover. But Rhea didn't move. Couldn't, because if she ran now, she'd never stop running. She'd spend the rest of her life looking over her shoulder, waiting for him to finish what he'd started. Put it down, she said. Her voice was steadier than she felt. Get on the ground. No. I said get on the ground, and I said no. His finger moved to the trigger. Don't test me. Cade stepped in front of her. The movement was awkward, painful, but deliberate. Don't, he said quietly. Get out of the way, Mercer. No. I will shoot you. Don't think I won't. Then shoot me. But you're not touching her. Not while I'm breathing. Dalton's jaw clenched. His face had gone red. Veins stood out on his forehead. For a long, terrible moment, Rhea thought he'd actually do it. Thought she'd watch Cade die right in front of her after everything they'd been through. Then another voice rang out, old, weathered, but carrying authority. John, put the gun down. Everyone turned. An old man stood at the edge of the crowd, thin frame, stooped shoulders, but his eyes were sharp and his voice was firm. McCready. This doesn't concern you, Dalton said through gritted teeth. The hell it doesn't. That's my stolen money you're waving a gun over. That's my ledger showing the discrepancy you told me to forget about. This is official business. Official business. McCready stepped closer, leaning heavily on his cane. Is that what we're calling it when the sheriff threatens to shoot unarmed people in the middle of the street? They're criminals. Are they? McCready's eyes swept over Rhea, then Cade. Or are they just people who asked questions you didn't want answered? Old man, I'm warning you. Warn all you want, but I've been going over my books, and the numbers don't add up. Haven't added up since the robbery. That's because you made a mistake. I don't make mistakes, not with money, never have. Everyone makes mistakes, not like this. McCready pulled out his own copy of the ledger from inside his coat. $300, gone. No explanation. You told me it was a clerical error, told me to let it go, said you'd handle it. I did handle it. By stealing my money and framing an innocent man? McCready's voice rose. That's not handling it, John. That's corruption. The crowd murmured, shifting, starting to see what had been in front of them all along. Dalton's control was slipping. Rhea could see it in his eyes. The way his grip on the gun tightened. The way his face had gone from red to almost purple. You don't know what you're talking about, he said, but his voice had lost its certainty. I know my books. I know my store. And I know when I'm being played for a fool. Old man, I'm warning you, Set. Warn all you want, but these people deserve the truth. Dalton's face twisted, something breaking behind his eyes. The truth? You want the truth? He raised the gun, not at Rhea, not at Cade, at McCready. Tommy lunged before Rhea could even process what was happening, grabbed Dalton's arm as the gun went off. The shot was deafening. People screamed, dove for cover. Someone's child started crying. But the bullet went wild, slammed into the dirt 5 feet from where McCready stood. Tommy and Dalton struggled. 2 of the other deputies moved in, trying to separate them without taking sides. In the chaos, Marcus Webb ran, just turned and bolted down the street like his life depended on it. Stop him! Iris shouted. But he was already gone, disappeared around a building and into the maze of streets beyond. When the dust settled, Tommy had Dalton pinned face first in the dirt. The gun lay several feet away. Dalton's face was pressed into the frozen ground, his arms pulled behind his back. Get off me, he snarled. Not until you calm down. I am calm. You just tried to shoot McCready. I was defending myself. From an old man with a ledger? Dalton thrashed, but Tommy held firm. The younger man was stronger than he looked. The crowd pressed closer. Not threatening, just watching, waiting to see what would happen next. Rhea picked up the gun, held it carefully, like it might bite. It's over, Dalton. Tell them the truth. I don't have to tell you anything. Then we'll let the evidence speak for itself. She held up the money, the ledger, made sure everyone could see. This is what he's been hiding, what he killed Jacob Mills to protect. What he was willing to shoot McCready over, because the truth was more dangerous to him than murder. You can't prove that, Dalton spat. But he'd stopped struggling, gone limp in Tommy's grip. Maybe not in a court, not beyond reasonable doubt. But people here know the truth now. They saw you lose control, saw you try to shoot an innocent man for asking questions. The crowd pressed even closer, faces angry now, scared, betrayed. Pete Garvin spoke up. For once his voice wasn't mocking, just tired. "Sheriff, did you take that money?" Silence. "Answer the question," someone else said. More silence. McCready stepped forward. His cane tapped against the frozen ground. "I want my money back, John, and I want answers, real answers, not more lies. You'll get nothing from me." "Then we'll get it from Marcus. He ran. Innocent men don't run." He panicked, or he knew it was over. Dalton's shoulders slumped, just slightly, but enough for everyone to see. He looked defeated, cornered, like an animal that knew the trap had finally closed. "You don't understand," he said quietly. "Understand what?" Rhea asked. "What it takes to keep a town like this together, the sacrifices, the hard choices, the weight of it. Stealing isn't a hard choice, it's a crime. I needed that money." The admission hung in the air. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. "For what?" McCready's voice was cold. "Debts, gambling, things got out of hand. I was trying to fix it. By stealing from me, I was going to pay you back. When? When I could. That's not how this works, John." "I know." Dalton's voice cracked. "I know. But I didn't know what else to do. And then it was done and I couldn't take it back, so I had to protect myself. By framing Cade. By doing what I had to do." "And Jacob?" Iris's voice cut through. "What about him?" Dalton was quiet. "Did you kill him?" she pressed. "I gave the order." Marcus pulled the trigger. Another admission. Another nail in his coffin. The crowd erupted. Angry shouts, accusations. Someone threw something, a rock or a clod of frozen dirt, that bounced off Dalton's shoulder. Tommy pulled him up. "We need to get him locked up before this turns into a mob." "Put him in his own jail," someone yelled. "See how he likes it." "We'll do this right," Tommy said. His voice was shaking, but firm. Legal, proper, not like he did it. They led Dalton away. The crowd followed, still shouting, still angry. Rhea stood in the street, the gun still in her hand, feeling like she'd just survived something she didn't fully understand yet. Cade leaned heavily against the wall of her house. His face had gone gray again. "You all right?" she asked. Define all right. Still breathing. Then yeah, barely. "Come inside. You need to lie down." "What about Marcus?" "Someone will find him. Town's not that big." They found Marcus 3 hours later, trying to leave town on foot. Caught him on the South Road with a bag of his belongings and what looked like his life savings. He confessed everything. The planning, the execution, the murder of Jacob Mills. Confirmed every detail of Dalton's story and added more. By nightfall, both men were locked in cells. The same cells they'd used to intimidate others. The same building where Dalton had pretended to dispense justice. Rhea sat on her porch as the sun set, watching the town try to process what had happened. People were still gathering in small groups, talking, arguing, trying to make sense of it all. Iris came by as darkness fell, sat down beside Rhea without asking. "How you holding up?" "I don't know yet." "Fair answer." They sat in silence for a while. "You did it," Iris said eventually. "We did it. Mostly you. You're the one who wouldn't let it go." "Couldn't. Not and live with myself. Most people would have." "I'm not most people." "No, you're really not." Cade emerged from inside, moving slowly but steadier than before. He sat down on Rhea's other side. The three of them watched the town settle into uneasy night. "What happens now?" Cade asked. "Trial," Iris said. "Real one, with real evidence and real justice." "You think they'll convict?"
After today, they'd have to be insane not to. People can be insane when it suits them. Maybe, but not this time. Too many witnesses, too much evidence. Rhea wasn't so sure. She'd seen people rationalize worse, seen them choose comfortable lies over uncomfortable truths. But maybe this time would be different. Maybe they'd finally had enough. Or maybe she was just too tired to be cynical anymore. "I need sleep," she said. "About a week's worth." "Same," Kate agreed. Iris stood. "I'll let you rest, but tomorrow we need to plan. Figure out what we're saying at the trial. Make sure our stories match." "They're not stories," Rhea said. "They're the truth." "Truth still needs to be told right, especially in court. Then we'll tell it right." After Iris left, Rhea and Cade sat in the darkness. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For standing in front of me, when Dalton had the gun." "You did the same for me." "That's different." "How?" "I was already dying. You saved my life. I owed you." "It's not about owing. It's about—" She trailed off, searching for words. "About what?" "About choosing to see people as worth saving, even when nobody else does." Cade was quiet for a long moment. "Yeah, I guess it is." They sat there until the cold drove them inside, until exhaustion finally overcame adrenaline, and when Rhea finally slept, she dreamed of nothing. Just deep, dark, peaceful nothing. For the first time in longer than she could remember, the days leading up to the trial felt like living in suspension, like the whole town was holding its breath, waiting to see what would happen when everyone finally had to choose a side. Rhea spent most of that time trying to keep her head down, but it was impossible. People approached her everywhere, at the general store, on the street, even at her own house, knocking on her door at all hours. Some came to apologize, others to ask questions, a few to tell her she'd ruined everything, that Dalton had kept the town safe and now everything would fall apart. Those ones she ignored, or tried to. "You don't understand what you've done," Mrs. Henderson said one afternoon, blocking Rhea's path outside the store. She was a heavy woman with iron gray hair and a permanent scowl. "That man kept order, kept us safe." "He killed someone," Rhea said flatly. "So you say." "So Marcus Webb confessed. Confessions can be forced, coerced. He confessed before anyone even questioned him. Ran away and got caught trying to flee." Mrs. Henderson's lips pressed into a thin line. "Still, you've upset the natural order of things. There will be consequences." "There already were consequences." "Jacob Mills is dead." Kate almost died. "How much more consequence do you need before you care?" "Don't you take that tone with me, girl. I'm not a girl, and I'll take whatever tone I want." Mrs. Henderson huffed and walked away, muttering about respect in young people and the decline of civilization. Rhea watched her go and felt nothing but tired. Cade's recovery continued, slow, painful, but steady. The swelling in his face went down. The bruises faded from purple to yellow to a sickly green before finally disappearing. His ribs still hurt with every deep breath, but he could move without wanting to scream. The arm would take longer, months probably. But he was alive and getting stronger every day. He'd started taking walks around town, short ones at first, just to the end of the street and back. But each day he went a little further. People stared, whispered. Some nodded, others looked away. Kate ignored them all with a practiced indifference that Rhea both admired and worried about. "You can't just pretend they don't exist," she said one evening. They were sitting on her porch again. It had become a habit, a ritual, the place where they could talk without walls pressing in. "Watch me," Cade said. "I'm serious. You live here now. You have to interact with people." "I really don't. You can't hide forever." "I hid for 5 years. I can do it again." "That's not hiding. That's giving up." He looked at her. His face had healed enough that both eyes were fully open now. The scars would remain, thin white lines across his cheek and forehead, but the worst of the damage had faded. "What do you want from me?" he asked. "I want you to try, to give this place a chance." "Why?" "So they can judge me, decide if I'm worthy of their acceptance. So you can decide if you want to be part of something, community, connection, whatever you want to call it." "I don't. You're a liar." He almost smiled. "Maybe." "Definitely. You wouldn't be here if you wanted to be alone. You'd be back on that mountain." I'm here because I can't ride yet, because my arm's broken and my ribs are still healing. You're here because you chose to stay, could have asked someone to take you back, could have left a dozen times. But you didn't. Cade didn't argue, just sat there, staring out at the darkening street. I don't know how to do this, he said finally. Do what? Be around people. Be part of things. I've been alone so long I forgot how. So learn again. It's not that simple. Nothing is, but that doesn't make it impossible. He turned to look at her, really look. You ever get tired of being right all the time? I'm not right all the time, just most of the time. That's worse? I know. They sat in silence for a while, the kind that didn't need filling. The trial starts in 3 days, Cade said eventually. I know. You nervous? Terrified. Doesn't show. I've gotten good at hiding it. That's a terrible skill to have. Tell me about it. The night before the trial, Iris organized what she called a strategy meeting, but what felt more like a support group. She, Rhea, Cade, and Tommy sat around Rhea's small table. Maps and notes spread between them. A bottle of whiskey that no one was drinking, but everyone kept looking at. The prosecution's case is solid, Tommy said. He'd been appointed interim sheriff until a proper election could be held. The responsibility sat heavy on his young shoulders. Marcus's confession, the money, McCready's testimony, yours, it's all there. But, Iris prompted, but Dalton's got a lawyer. Good one from what I hear, and he's going to try to tear apart every piece of it. How? Rhea asked. By making you look unreliable, by suggesting you had ulterior motives, by painting Dalton as a dedicated public servant who made mistakes but doesn't deserve to be destroyed. He killed a man. He gave the order. Marcus pulled the trigger. The lawyer's going to argue that makes a difference. Does it? Legally? Maybe. Morally? Not to me. Cade leaned back in his chair, wincing as his ribs protested. What about Marcus? What's his defense? Coercion? Says Dalton threatened him, that he was scared for his life. Was he? Probably. Doesn't make murder okay. No, but it makes it understandable. They were quiet for a moment. The key, Tommy said, is making sure your testimonies are consistent, not rehearsed, that'll look fake, but consistent. Tell the truth, but tell it the same way every time. The truth is the truth, Rhea said. Yeah, but there are different ways to tell it, different emphasis, different details. A good lawyer can use those differences to make it look like you're lying. So what do we do? Practice. Go through it. What happened when? Who said what? Get comfortable with the facts so when you're on the stand, you don't hesitate. They spent the next 3 hours doing exactly that, going through the timeline, the evidence, the confrontations. By the time they finished, Rhea's head was pounding and her throat was dry. I need air, she said, standing abruptly. She walked outside. The night was cold and clear, stars scattered across the sky like broken glass. Cade followed her a minute later. Didn't say anything, just stood beside her. I keep thinking about Jacob, Rhea said, about how he's dead because he told the truth. He's dead because Dalton's a coward. Same result, different blame. Doesn't help him. No, but it might help his memory, making sure people know he was brave, that he mattered. Rhea nodded. Yeah, I guess. They stood in silence until the cold drove them back inside. The trial was held in the town hall on a Tuesday morning, the largest building in Blackridge Hollow, and it was packed. Every bench filled, people standing along the walls, more outside, unable to fit. Rhea had never seen so many people in one place. She sat in the front row with Iris beside her. Cade was sequestered with the other witnesses. They weren't allowed to hear each other's testimony. The room smelled like wet wool and nervous sweat, and too many bodies in too small a space. Judge Harriet Voss entered precisely at 9. She was a circuit judge, middle-aged with sharp eyes and a reputation for running a tight courtroom. All rise, someone called. The room stood. Voss took her seat, surveyed the crowd with a look that could have frozen water. Sit. They sat. We're here, Voss began, to determine the guilt or innocence of John Dalton and Marcus Webb in the matter of robbery, conspiracy, and in the case of Mr. Webb, murder. This is not a circus. This is not entertainment. Anyone who treats it as such will be removed immediately and without warning. Am I clear? A chorus of murmured agreement. Good. Prosecution, you may begin. The prosecutor was a thin man named Silas Crane. He had wire-rimmed glasses and a voice that carried despite its softness. He stood, adjusted his glasses, and addressed the room. Your Honor, members of the jury, this case is fundamentally simple. John Dalton, a man sworn to uphold the law, broke it. He stole $300 from McCready's general store. When that theft was discovered, he conspired with his deputy, Marcus Webb, to frame an innocent man. And when that frame-up was threatened by a witness, Jacob Mills, they silenced that witness permanently. He paused. Let the words settle. The evidence will show a clear pattern of corruption, cowardice, and cruelty. We will prove beyond reasonable doubt that these men are guilty, and we will ask that you hold them accountable for their crimes. He sat down. Dalton's lawyer stood. His name was Richard Thornton, a heavy-set man with a booming voice and an expensive suit that looked out of place in Blackridge Hollow. Your Honor, the prosecution has just painted a dramatic picture. But drama isn't evidence. My client, John Dalton, has served this town faithfully for 15 years. He has kept the peace, protected the innocent, and made difficult decisions that others were too weak or too scared to make. Thornton walked slowly in front of the jury box, making eye contact with each person. The defense will show that this case is built on circumstantial evidence, coerced testimony, and the word of people with clear motives to lie. We will demonstrate that John Dalton is not only innocent, but that he is being persecuted by those who wish to see a good man destroyed. The opening statements set the battle lines. This wasn't just about guilt or innocence, it was about who the jury would choose to believe. The first witness was McCready. He walked to the stand slowly, his cane tapping against the wooden floor, took a seat, and was sworn in. Crane approached with his notes. Mr. McCready, can you describe what happened on the night of the robbery? I closed the store at 8 o'clock, same as always, McCready said. His voice was steady despite his age. Locked up, counted the till. Put the money in the lockbox, went home. How much money was in the lockbox? $347.32. You're certain of that number? I've been keeping books for 40 years. I'm certain. What happened the next morning? I came back at 6 to start inventory. Found the back door jimmied open. The lockbox broken into. $300 gone. Not the full amount? No, they left the change, just took the bills. What did you do? Reported it to Sheriff Dalton. He said he'd investigate. Did he? Said he did. Came back a week later saying it was Cade Mercer. Said he had evidence. What evidence? Never showed me any. Just said Mercer was guilty and that was that. Did you believe him? McCready hesitated. At first. What changed? The numbers didn't add up. I kept going over my books and something felt wrong. The timing, the way Dalton brushed off my questions. Then Miss Calloway came to me with my own ledger and I saw it clear as day. Saw what? That Dalton had been lying to me from the start. Objection, Thornton stood. Speculation. Sustained, Voss said. Mr. McCready, stick to what you know, not what you think. Yes, Your Honor. McCready cleared his throat. What I know is this. My books showed $300 missing. Dalton told me it was a clerical error and to forget about it. But I don't make errors with money. Never have. And when Miss Calloway showed you the money she found? I knew it was mine. Knew it had to be. Thornton's cross-examination was aggressive but careful. Mr. McCready, you're 73 years old, correct? 74 next month. And how's your eyesight these days? Good enough to keep my books, but not what it used to be? Nothing's what it used to be. Doesn't mean I'm blind. What about your memory? You ever forget things? Sometimes, don't we all? So it's possible you miscounted that night? No. You're absolutely certain? I counted 3 times, like I always do, $347.32. But you didn't actually see the theft happen? No. And you have no direct evidence connecting my client to the crime? Just that the money ended up in his office. Allegedly ended up there, based on testimony from someone who admits to breaking and entering. The money was there. That's a fact.
We'll let the jury decide what's fact and what's convenient storytelling. McCready stepped down, his jaw tight. Next was Iris. She took the stand with visible nervousness, her hands clasped tight in her lap. Crane smiled gently at her.
Miss Chen, can you tell us what happened on the night you entered Sheriff Dalton's office? Objection, Thornton barked. The witness is admitting to a crime. Which is not what she's on trial for, Voss said dryly. Overruled. Answer the question, Miss Chen. Iris took a breath. I received an anonymous note telling me to check Dalton's lockbox. At first I didn't believe it, thought it might be a trap, but I kept thinking about Jacob Mills, about how scared he'd been. You knew Mr. Mills? Not well. He was a customer, quiet man, kept to himself. What made you go to him? He worked late sometimes, at the livery, right across from McCready's store. I thought maybe he'd seen something the night of the robbery. Had he? Yes. He told me he saw two men leaving the store late that night, carrying something. He recognized them both. Who were they? Sheriff Dalton and Deputy Webb. The room erupted in whispers. Voss banged her gavel once. The noise died. Continue, Crane said. Jacob said he didn't think anything of it at the time. Figured they were investigating. But when I asked him about it specifically, he realized what he'd seen. What happened after he told you this? Iris's voice wavered. He was scared. Said if anyone found out he talked to me, he'd be in danger. I tried to tell him it would be okay, that we'd protect him. And then? He was shot the next day. They said it was an accident, cleaning his gun.
Do you believe that?
No. Why not?
Because he'd told me the truth and less than 24 hours later he was dead. That's not coincidence. Thornton's cross-examination was brutal. He went after every detail, her timeline, her motives, the anonymous note that conveniently pointed her exactly where to look. You expect us to believe, he said, voice dripping with contempt, that you, a shopkeeper with no investigative experience, broke into the sheriff's office and just happened to find exactly what you were looking for? I didn't just happen to find it, Iris shot back. Someone told me where to look. This mysterious anonymous person? Yes. Who you've never identified? Because I don't know who they are. How convenient. An anonymous note. A dead witness who can't verify your story. And stolen evidence. You're asking this jury to take an awful lot on faith. I'm asking them to look at the facts. The money was in Dalton's office. That's a fact. A fact that you can't prove without admitting to a crime. I already admitted to the crime. I'm not ashamed of it. You should be. Why? Because I did what was right instead of what was legal? There's no difference between right and legal. Tell that to Jacob Mills. Oh wait, you can't. Because he's dead. Voss intervened before it could escalate further. That's enough. Step down, Miss Chen. Iris did, her face flushed, her hands shaking. Rhea caught her eye as she passed, gave her a small nod. You did good. The trial continued, witness after witness. Tommy Vance testified about the confrontation outside Rhea's house, about Dalton losing control, trying to shoot McCready, about the way fear had twisted into rage on the sheriff's face. Other townspeople testified about Dalton's behavior in the weeks following the robbery, his evasiveness, his anger when questioned, the way he'd shut down any conversation about the investigation. Then it was Cade's turn. He walked to the stand slowly, still favoring his ribs. The courtroom went quiet. People stared, some with sympathy, others with lingering suspicion. He sat, was sworn in, met the jury's eyes without flinching. Crane approached. Mr. Mercer, where were you on the night of the robbery? My cabin, on the mountain. Can anyone verify that? No, I live alone. How long have you been living on the mountain? 5 years, give or take. Why? Cade's jaw tightened. Personal reasons. That's vague. It's all I'm giving. Crane didn't push. When did you first learn you were a suspect in the robbery? When Dalton and his men showed up at my cabin. I was barely conscious at the time, mauled by a bear a few days earlier. What did Sheriff Dalton say? Said I'd robbed McCready's store, said he had a witness. I told him it wasn't me. He didn't care. Did he show you any evidence? No. Did he explain why he suspected you? No, just accusations. What did you think when you heard about the witness? I thought someone was lying. Either the witness didn't exist or Dalton was making it up. Turns out it was both. The room stirred. Dalton's face went red, but he didn't speak. Thornton's cross-examination was vicious. He painted Cade as an outsider, a recluse, someone who'd abandoned society and therefore couldn't be trusted. You admit you haven't been to town in 5 years, correct? Yes. Why not? Already told you. Personal reasons. Personal reasons. How mysterious. Tell me, Mr. Mercer, did you leave because you were running from something? No. Then why isolate yourself so completely? Because I wanted to. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting. Thornton's face darkened. The jury deserves better than evasions. The jury deserves the truth, which is that I was on that mountain when the robbery happened, that I had nothing to do with it, that Dalton needed a scapegoat and I was convenient. Convenient because you're unstable? Because you fled society? I didn't flee anything. I chose solitude. There's a difference. Is there? Or is that just what you tell yourself? Objection. Crane stood. Counsel is badgering the witness. Sustained. Move on, Mr. Thornton. Thornton tried a different approach. You claim you were attacked by a bear. I don't claim it. It happened. Can you prove that? Cade unbuttoned his shirt, pulled it aside to show the scars, deep claw marks across his chest and shoulder. The courtroom gasped. That proof enough? Cade asked quietly. Thornton had no response. When Cade stepped down, Rhea could see the exhaustion in every movement, but also something else, a kind of defiant pride. He'd stood his ground. Finally, it was Rhea's turn. She walked to the stand on legs that felt like water. Every eye in the room followed her, judging, weighing, deciding. She sat, was sworn in, tried to ignore the pounding of her heart. Crane approached with a gentle expression. Miss Calloway, can you tell us why you went to Mr. Mercer's cabin? Because no one else would. Can you elaborate? The whole town had written him off, decided he wasn't worth saving, but he was a person, and people deserve help, regardless of what others think of them. What did you find when you arrived? Cade barely alive, mauled, bleeding. If I'd waited even one more day, he'd be dead. What did you do? Patched him up, used what medical supplies I had, kept him warm, kept him breathing. Why? Because it was the right thing to do. Even though you didn't know him? Especially because I didn't know him. Help shouldn't require a relationship. It should just require need. Crane nodded. When Sheriff Dalton arrived, what happened? He accused Cade of robbery, wanted to take him back to town immediately. I knew Cade wouldn't survive the trip, so I refused. You defied a direct order from the sheriff? I defied an order that would have killed an innocent man. Yes. What happened next? I started asking questions, looking for evidence, trying to understand why Dalton was so determined to pin this on Cade. And what did you find? The truth. That Dalton had stolen the money himself, that he needed someone to blame, and that he was willing to let that person die to cover his tracks. Thornton's cross-examination was exactly what she'd expected. He went after her character, her weight, her history in the town. Miss Calloway, he said, voice oozing false sympathy. Isn't it true that you've been something of an outcast in this town most of your life? I've been treated like one. Yes. And doesn't that give you motivation to want revenge, to tear down someone in a position of power? No, it gives me motivation to tell the truth. Or to create a narrative where you're the hero? I'm not a hero. I'm just someone who refused to look the other way. Isn't it possible you're wrong? That you misinterpreted the evidence? Anything's possible, but I'm not wrong. How can you be so certain? Because I saw the fear in Dalton's eyes when he thought he was losing control. Because I watched him try to shoot an old man for asking questions. Because innocent people don't act like that. Or maybe desperate people act like that. People being falsely accused. He confessed, in front of witnesses, admitted he took the money, under duress, with a gun to his head. The gun was on the ground. Tommy had him pinned. There was no duress, just truth finally coming out. Thornton tried several more angles, suggested she'd planted the money, that she'd coerced Iris, that she'd fabricated Jacob's testimony. But Rhea held firm. The truth was the truth, and she'd lived it.
When she stepped down, her legs were shaking and her mouth was dry. But she'd done it. The final witness was Marcus Webb. He'd taken a deal, testimony in exchange for a reduced sentence. His lawyer had made it clear, cooperate or hang. He cooperated. He walked to the stand like a man going to his own execution. Sat down heavily, stared at his hands. Crane didn't waste time. "Mr. Webb, did you help Sheriff Dalton rob McCready's store?" "Yes." The room exploded. Shouts, gasps. Voss banged her gavel hard enough to crack wood. "Order! I will clear this room if necessary." Silence returned. "Continue," Voss said. Marcus swallowed hard. "Dalton came to me about a month before it happened. Said he was in trouble. Gambling debts. Owed money to some dangerous people. Asked if I'd help him get it. And you agreed? I was scared to say no. He was my boss, my friend, and he said it would be easy, quick, that no one would get hurt." "What happened the night of the robbery?" "We waited until McCready closed, broke in through the back door. Dalton knew where the lockbox was. We took $300, left the change so it wouldn't look like professionals." "Whose idea was that?" "Dalton's. He said taking everything would raise suspicions. But 300 looked like opportunists." "What happened after?" "We hid the money in Dalton's office. He said we'd wait a few months, then split it. Make it look like we'd solved the case, but the money was never recovered." "And Cade Mercer?" "Dalton's idea. Said we needed someone to blame. Mercer was perfect. Lived alone. No alibi. No one who'd defend him." "When did Jacob Mills become a problem?" Marcus's voice dropped. "About a week after the robbery. Dalton heard Jacob had been talking to Iris, that he'd seen something." "What did Dalton tell you to do?" "Said we had to make sure Jacob didn't talk. That if he did, we'd both hang." "So you killed him?" "Dalton told me to. Marcus's voice cracked. "I made it look like an accident. Went to his place. We talked about guns. I asked to see his. And then Yet. He couldn't finish." The courtroom was silent. Dead silent. "You shot him," Crane said quietly. "Yes." "While he was unarmed?" "Yes." "And you made it look like he'd done it himself?" "Yes." The confession hung in the air like smoke. Thornton tried to salvage something in cross-examination, suggested Marcus was lying to save himself, that the deal had incentivized false testimony. But Marcus didn't waver. "I'm not lying. I did it. Dalton planned it. I executed it. And I'll spend the rest of my life wishing I'd had the courage to say no." When he stepped down, even Thornton looked defeated. Closing arguments were brief. Crane laid out the evidence piece by piece, the money, the ledger, the testimonies, the confession. "These men," he said, walking slowly in front of the jury, "betrayed the trust of this town. They stole from it. They lied to it. And when that lie was threatened, they killed to protect it. The defense will ask you to doubt, to question, to find reasonable explanations for unreasonable actions." He paused, met each juror's eyes. "But the facts are clear. The evidence is overwhelming. John Dalton and Marcus Webb are guilty, and justice demands that you hold them accountable." Thornton made one last attempt, painted Dalton as a flawed man who'd made mistakes under pressure, suggested the town owed him mercy for his years of service. "My client is not a monster," he said. "He's a man who made terrible choices when cornered by impossible circumstances. Does he deserve punishment? Perhaps. But does he deserve to be destroyed? To have his life's work reduced to one moment of weakness?" He looked at the jury with pleading eyes. "I ask you to remember the man John Dalton was for 15 years before you judge him for what he became in one dark moment. But his heart wasn't in it. Everyone could tell. The jury deliberated for exactly 2 hours and 17 minutes. When they returned, the foreman stood. An older man named Samuel Gray, who'd worked at the mill for 40 years. "Have you reached a verdict?" Voss asked. "We have, Your Honor." "In the matter of John Dalton, on the charge of robbery, how do you find?" "Guilty." The room erupted. Voss banged her gavel but didn't stop the noise this time. "On the charge of conspiracy to commit murder? Guilty." More shouts, more chaos. "And Marcus Webb, on the charge of robbery?" "Guilty." "On the charge of murder?" "Guilty." The noise was deafening now. People crying, shouting, some in celebration, others in disbelief. Dalton sat motionless at his table. His face had gone pale. Empty.
Marcus put his head in his hands and sobbed. Sentencing came a week later. The courtroom was packed again, but quieter this time, more solemn. Voss looked down at the two men before her. John Dalton, you have been found guilty of robbery and conspiracy to commit murder. This court sentences you to 25 years in prison, with restitution to be paid to Mr. McReady in the amount of $300 plus interest. Dalton didn't react, just stood there. Marcus Webb, you have been found guilty of robbery and murder in the first degree. This court sentences you to life in prison, with the possibility of parole after 20 years. Marcus nodded, like he'd expected nothing less. They were led away in chains, the same chains they'd used on others, the same building where they'd pretended to dispense justice. Rhea sat in the courtroom and watched them go, felt nothing, no satisfaction, no vindication, just exhaustion. Outside, people approached her again, some to apologize, some to thank her, some just to stare. She accepted it all with quiet grace, then walked home alone. Cade was waiting on her porch when she got there. It's over, she said. Yeah. You gonna stay now, or go back to the mountain? He looked at her, then at the town, then back at her. I'll stay. For a while. That's not a real answer. It's the best I got right now. She sat down beside him. Fair enough. They watched the sun set over Black Ridge Hollow. The town that had judged them, dismissed them, nearly destroyed them. You think anything will actually change? Cade asked. I don't know, maybe. People saw what happened, saw what fear and lies can do. Seeing and learning are different things. Yeah, but at least they saw, that's something. He was quiet for a moment. Then, thank you. For what? For not giving up on me, on this, on the idea that truth matters. Rhea didn't know what to say to that, so she just nodded. They sat there until the stars came out, two people who'd survived the worst their world could throw at them, and maybe, just maybe, found something worth holding on to in the process.
The weeks after the trial didn't bring the relief Rhea had expected. She'd imagined vindication would feel different,
Lighter. Like finally being able to breathe after holding your breath underwater for years. Instead, it felt like standing in the ruins of something and trying to figure out what to build next. The town changed, but not in the clean, simple way stories promised. Some people nodded at her now when she passed. Others still crossed the street to avoid her. A few approached with apologies that felt more like attempts to ease their own guilt than genuine remorse. Pete Garvin wouldn't meet her eyes for weeks. When he finally did, standing in line at the general store, he mumbled something about being wrong and walked away before she could respond. Sarah Drummond actually apologized, properly. Standing in the middle of the street one afternoon, her hands twisted together, her voice barely audible over the wind. I should have said something, she'd said. At the tavern, when you volunteered, I should have backed you up. Rhea had just looked at her. Yeah, you should have. Sarah had flinched like she'd been slapped. I was scared. We were all scared, but some of us chose to act anyway. I know, and I'm sorry, truly sorry. Rhea had wanted to stay angry. It would have been easier, safer, but she was tired of carrying that weight. Apology noted, she'd said finally. But trust? That takes time. I understand. Do you? Because saying sorry is easy. Being different is hard. Sarah had nodded. I'll try. To be different, better. We'll see. And that was the thing about the aftermath. Everyone wanted absolution, wanted to be forgiven and move on. But moving on wasn't the same as making things right. Iris handled everything with her usual pragmatism. The day after sentencing, she'd shown up at Rhea's house with coffee and a determined expression. We need to talk about what happens next, she'd said. Next? With the store, with the town, with you. What about me? You can't just go back to raising chickens and keeping your head down. Not after this. Watch me. Rhea, you change things. You matter now. People listen to you. Some people. More than before. And that number's growing. Rhea had sighed. What do you want from me? I want you to help me expand the store. Be a partner. Use that stubborn streak of yours to build something instead of just survive. I'm not a businesswoman. Neither was I until I had to be. We learn. We grow. That's what living is. The offer had surprised her. Not just the business aspect, but the idea that someone saw her as valuable beyond a crisis, that she could be useful in peace, not just war. "I'll think about it," Rhea had said. "Don't think too long. Opportunity doesn't wait for people who aren't ready." 3 days later, Rhea had said yes. Not because she was sure it would work, but because staying still felt like dying slowly. They started small. Reorganizing inventory, updating the books. Iris taught her about ordering and pricing and dealing with suppliers. Rhea learned she had a head for numbers and a talent for negotiation that surprised them both. "You're actually good at this," Iris had said one afternoon, watching Rhea haggle with a traveling merchant over fabric prices. "Don't sound so shocked." "I'm not shocked, just pleased, and maybe a little smug about being right." "You're always smug." "With good reason." The work gave Rhea something she hadn't realized she'd been missing: purpose beyond survival. A reason to wake up that didn't involve just getting through another day. But nights were still hard. She'd dream about the cabin, about Cade bleeding out, about Dalton's gun pointed at MacReady, about Jacob Mills, who she'd never met but whose death haunted her anyway. Sometimes she'd wake up gasping, her heart pounding, convinced she'd failed, that Cade had died, that Dalton had won, that nothing had changed. Those nights she'd sit on her porch and wait for dawn, watch the stars fade and the sky lighten and remind herself that she was still here, still breathing, still fighting. Cade stayed. Not at her house, that would have given the gossips too much ammunition, but in the room above the livery that Tommy had offered him. The same room where Jacob Mills had lived before Dalton's bullet ended his story. Cade didn't talk about it much, but Rhea saw the way he looked at that building sometimes. The weight of being alive when someone else wasn't. The guilt that came with surviving. She understood that. Felt it too. They'd both been saved by luck and timing and the choices of others, and that knowledge sat heavy. His recovery was slow. The arm healed crooked. The break hadn't been set properly, and there was nothing to do about it now. He'd never have full range of motion again. The ribs healed better, but deep breaths still hurt on cold days. The nightmares took the longest. Rhea knew because sometimes, late at night, she'd hear him walking the streets, pacing, trying to outrun whatever chased him in his sleep. One night, about 6 weeks after the trial, she found him sitting on the church steps at 2 a.m. "Can't sleep?" she asked, sitting down beside him. "Never can anymore." "Same." They sat in silence for a while. The town was dead quiet. No wind. No sound except their breathing. "You ever think about going back?" Rhea asked. "To the mountain?" "Every day." "Why don't you?" Cade was quiet for a long time. "Because I'm scared if I go back, I'll never leave again. And I think that would be the same as dying." "How so?" "Because I'd be choosing isolation over living, choosing safety over connection, and I've done that before. It nearly killed me." "You were surviving. I was hiding. There's a difference." Rhea understood that too. Had spent her whole life hiding in plain sight, making herself small so people wouldn't notice her enough to hurt her. "What changed?" she asked. "You did. You showed me that being seen isn't the same as being destroyed. That someone could look at me, really look, and decide I was worth saving." "You were always worth saving." "Maybe. But I didn't believe it. Not until you did." The words settled between them. Heavy. "True. I'm not that special," Rhea said quietly. "You're wrong about that. I'm just stubborn and too angry to quit. That's what makes you special." She almost laughed. "That's a low bar." "Maybe, but it's higher than most people clear." They sat until the cold drove them inside, until exhaustion finally overcame adrenaline and fear. And when Rhea finally slept, she dreamed of nothing. Just deep, dark, peaceful nothing. Tommy Vance became the permanent sheriff after a town vote. He'd run unopposed, not because everyone supported him, but because no one else wanted the job. The responsibility sat heavy on his young shoulders. He came to Rhea's house at least once a week, asking for advice. Not because she had experience, she didn't, but because she'd proven she could see through lies. "There's a dispute between the Hendersons and the Clarks," he said one afternoon. "About property lines, both sides swear they're right. What does the deed say?" "That's the problem. The deed's ambiguous. Could be read either way." "Then you need a surveyor, not a sheriff." "We don't have a surveyor." "Then bring one in from the next town." "That costs money. Neither family wants to pay for it.
Then tell them they can either pay for a surveyor or keep fighting until one of them does something stupid. Their choice. Tommy had blinked. That's harsh. That's reality. People don't change until the cost of staying the same gets too high. He'd implemented her advice. The families had grumbled but eventually pooled money for a surveyor. The dispute was settled in a week. You should run for mayor, Tommy had said after. Absolutely not. Why not? People listen to you. Some people. And I don't want to be responsible for everyone's problems. I've got enough of my own. But the seed had been planted. Not for mayor, she meant what she'd said about that, but for the idea that she could help shape things, could be part of building instead of just surviving. Spring came early that year. The snow melted fast, turning the streets to thick mud that sucked at boots and made horses nervous. But underneath the mud, green things pushed through. Grass. Wildflowers. Life insisting on itself despite everything. Cade started helping at the livery full-time. Tommy had offered him the job after the trial, and to everyone's surprise, he'd accepted. He was good with horses, patient, gentle in ways that contradicted his rough exterior and rougher past. People still stared when he walked by, still whispered, but less than before. And some of the whispers had changed from suspicion to curiosity. Heard Mercer fix the Johnson's mare, someone said in the store one day. Horse had been lame for weeks. He had her walking sound in 3 days. He's got away with animals, someone else agreed. Shame about what happened to him. Rhea had listened from behind the counter saying nothing, but she'd felt something shift. Not acceptance, not yet, but the possibility of it. One evening, about 3 months after the trial, Cade showed up at Rhea's house with a bottle of whiskey and a question. You ever think about leaving? He asked. They were on her porch again, their usual spot. The place where conversations happened without pressure. All the time, Rhea admitted. Why don't you? Because leaving means they won, means they get to decide I don't belong here. But do you? Belong here, I mean. Rhea thought about it, really thought. I don't know, but I'm not letting them make that choice for me. Even if staying makes you miserable? I'm not miserable, I'm just tired. Of what? Of proving myself. Of every interaction being a test. Of walking into rooms and watching people decide whether I'm worth their time. Cade nodded. Yeah, I know that feeling. Do you want to leave? Sometimes. When the nightmares get bad, when I remember what it was like on the mountain. Quiet? Empty, but also simple. No judgment, no expectations, just existence. That's not living. That's just not dying. Maybe that was enough before. And now? He looked at her. Really looked. Now I'm not sure anymore. They passed the bottle back and forth, not saying much. Sometimes silence was its own kind of conversation. What do you want? Cade asked eventually. Long term. If you could have anything. Rhea had been asking herself the same question for months. The answer kept changing. I want to matter, she said finally. Not because I proved something or fought someone, just because I exist. Because I'm here. You do matter. To some people. To you. To Iris. But I want to matter to myself. Want to wake up and not have to justify my existence before I've even had coffee. That's a reasonable want. It's a hard want, because it requires believing I'm worth something even when the world says I'm not. The world's wrong. The world doesn't care if it's wrong. It just keeps being what it is. Cade smiled. A real one. Then maybe we need to be louder than the world. That's exhausting. Everything worth doing is. They sat until the stars came out, until the bottle was empty and the cold drove them inside. And when Rhea went to bed that night, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Not the desperate kind that clings to impossible things, but the stubborn kind that says maybe tomorrow will be different. Maybe things can change. Maybe I can change them. The town held a memorial for Jacob Mills 4 months after his death. It took that long to organize, to get people to agree, to overcome the discomfort of acknowledging they'd failed him. It was held at the church on a Sunday afternoon. His family had moved away years ago, but people came anyway. The whole town, it seemed, standing room only. Tommy gave a short speech, talked about courage, about the price of speaking truth. Jacob Mills didn't have to tell Iris what he saw, Tommy said, his voice carrying through the packed church. He could have stayed quiet, stayed safe, but he chose to speak, and that choice cost him everything. He paused, let the words settle. We honor him by remembering that silence might be safe, but it's not free. That looking away might be easier, but it's not right. That sometimes doing the right thing means risking everything, and that those who risk everything deserve to be remembered. After the speech, people were invited to share memories. A few did. Talked about Jacob as a quiet man, a good trapper, someone who kept to himself but never caused trouble. Then Iris stood. I didn't know Jacob well, she said. Her voice was steady, but her hands shook. Only saw him a handful of times, but in his last hours he showed more courage than most of us show in a lifetime. He knew telling the truth would put him in danger, knew it might get him killed, but he told it anyway, because it was the right thing to do. She looked around the church, met eyes, held gazes. We failed him, all of us. We created a town where telling the truth was more dangerous than keeping silent, where corruption could flourish because no one wanted to risk speaking up. Jacob paid for our cowardice, and we need to remember that, need to make sure it never happens again. The church was silent, then McCready stood. Miss Chen's right. We failed Jacob, failed Cade Mercer. Would have failed Miss Calloway too if she'd let us. We chose comfort over courage, and a good man died because of it. He looked around the room. We can't bring him back, can't undo what was done, but we can be better, can build a town where people like Jacob don't have to be afraid to tell the truth. One by one, others stood, acknowledged their part, their silence, their complicity. Not everyone. Some people sat rigid, refusing to participate, but enough stood that the church felt lighter somehow, like a weight had been acknowledged even if it hadn't been fully lifted. After the service, people gathered outside, talking, sharing food someone had brought, trying to build community out of collective grief and guilt. Sarah Drummond approached Rhea again. She'd been doing that more often, trying to rebuild trust through small conversations and consistent presence. That was hard to hear, Sarah said. Truth usually is. I keep thinking about what Iris said, about failing him, about creating a place where truth was dangerous. You did create that place. We all did. Some more than others, but we all had a part. How do we fix it? By being different, by choosing courage over comfort, by backing people up when they take risks instead of judging them for it. Sarah nodded slowly. I'm trying to be better. I know, and it shows. Really? You're here, aren't you? Standing in discomfort instead of avoiding it. That's progress. It doesn't feel like enough. It never does, but it's something. They stood together in uncomfortable silence, the kind that meant growth was happening even if it hurt. Cade found Rhea an hour later. She was sitting alone on a bench near the church, watching people interact. You okay? He asked. Define okay. Still breathing, not actively dying. Then, yeah, I'm okay. He sat beside her. His arm was in a sling again. He'd overdone it at the livery yesterday and aggravated the old injury. This town's never going to be perfect, he said. I know. Some people are never going to change it. I know that too. So why stay? Rhea thought about it, about all the reasons she'd stayed so far. Spite, stubbornness, refusal to let them win. But underneath all that was something simpler. Because I want to see if we can build something better, she said. Not perfect, just better than it was. You think we can? I think we have to try. Because if we don't, Jacob died for nothing, and I can't accept that. Cade nodded. Yeah, me neither. They sat there as the sun began to set, watching their town, broken, flawed, struggling, try to be better than it was. Summer came in slowly, the days stretched longer. The heat built gradually, turning the mud to dust and the dust to clouds that hung in the air. The store expanded. Iris and Rhea hired 2 people to help with the increased business. One was a young woman named Clara, who'd lost her husband to illness and needed work. The other was an older man named Samuel, who'd worked at the mill until it closed. You sure about this? Iris had asked before making the offers. Taking on employees means responsibility, Means we can't just close when we feel like it. I'm sure we need the help, and they need the work. You've changed, Iris had said, smiling. How? You're thinking bigger, beyond just survival. Is that good? It's necessary for the town, for you. The added help meant Rhea had more time to think, to plan, to consider what came next. She started teaching basic literacy at the church on Wednesday evenings. Not because anyone asked her to, but because she'd overheard Clara mention she couldn't read well and wanted to learn. I could teach you, Rhea had offered. If you want. Clara's face had lit up. Really? Why not? I can read. You want to learn. Seems simple. Word spread. Within a month, she had 8 students, adults who'd never had the chance to learn, kids whose parents couldn't afford school. She taught them in the church basement, used old books from McCready's store, made lessons simple and practical. It wasn't much, but it was something. You're building a legacy, Tommy said one evening, watching her pack up her teaching materials. I'm just helping people read. You're showing them they matter, that their growth matters. That's bigger than reading. You give me too much credit. I give you exactly the right amount.
Cade's nightmares started to fade. Not disappearing entirely, trauma didn't work that way, but lessening. He slept more, paced less. One night, about 7 months after the trial, he knocked on Rhea's door at a normal hour instead of wandering the streets at 3 a.m. I slept, he said when she opened the door. That's good. Slept through the whole night. Didn't wake up once. Cade, that's great. He looked almost surprised, like he'd forgotten what normal felt like. Yeah, it is. They celebrated with coffee on the porch, talked about nothing important. About the weather and the horses and the new family that had moved to town. Normal conversation, normal life. It felt strange. Good, but strange. I've been thinking, Cade said eventually. About staying, not just for a while, but actually staying. What changed? I did. Or maybe I just finally accepted that hiding isn't the same as healing. Took you long enough. Some of us are slow learners. Clearly, he smiled. You going to give me a hard time about this? Absolutely. Someone has to keep you humble. Pretty sure that's your main job. One of them. They sat in comfortable silence, the kind that only came with time and trust. Thank you, Cade said quietly. For what? For not giving up. On me. On this town. On the idea that things can get better. I almost did. 100 times. But you didn't. No, I didn't. Why? She thought about all the reasons. The anger, the stubbornness, the refusal to let people like Dalton define the world. But underneath it all was something simpler. Because I wanted to matter, she said. And I finally realized that mattering doesn't come from other people deciding I'm worth something. It comes from deciding it myself, and then living like I believe it. That's the hardest part. Yeah, it is. But you did it. We did it. You, me, Iris, even Tommy. We all decided we were worth fighting for. And the town's trying. Not everyone. Not perfectly. But trying. Cade nodded. That's enough for now. More than enough. Fall came with brilliant colors. The trees turned gold and red and orange. The air grew crisp. The harvest came in heavy. The town held a festival. Nothing fancy, just music and food and people trying to celebrate together. Rhea almost didn't go. Crowds still made her uncomfortable. The stares, the whispers, the weight of being seen. But Iris dragged her, literally grabbed her arm and pulled her into the street. You're coming. No arguments. I don't want to. I don't care. You helped save this town. You get to enjoy it. So Rhea went, stood on the edge at first, watching. But then Tommy waved her over, and McCready asked her opinion on something. And before she knew it, she was in the middle of it all, talking, laughing, being part of something. It felt strange, unfamiliar, but not bad. Cade found her an hour later, offered her a cup of cider. You look happy, he said. I look terrified. Little bit of both, maybe. Yeah, maybe. They stood together, watching their town celebrate. The people who judged them, dismissed them, and finally, grudgingly, accepted them. You ever think about what would have happened if you hadn't come up that mountain?
Cade asked. Sometimes. I'd probably still be invisible.
Still trying to convince myself that being alone was the same as being safe. And me? You'd be dead. Probably. Definitely. He smiled. Guess we saved each other then. Guess so. The music picked up. Someone started dancing. Others joined. Come on, Iris called, waving them over. Rhea shook her head. I don't dance. You do now. And somehow, impossibly, Rhea found herself dancing. Not well, not gracefully, but honestly. Without shame. Cade joined her, his movements awkward from his injuries, but real. And for the first time in her life, Rhea felt like she belonged. Not because she'd proven anything, not because she'd earned it through suffering, but because she'd chosen to show up, to fight, to refuse to be erased. The festival wound down as the sun set. People drifted home, tired, content. Rhea and Cade walked back to her house slowly, neither in a hurry. Thank you, he said when they reached her porch. You keep saying that, because I keep meaning it. For what this time? For showing me that life's worth living, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Rhea sat down on the steps. You showed me the same thing. How? By surviving, by choosing to stay even when leaving would have been easier, by proving that broken things can heal, maybe not perfectly, but enough. Cade sat beside her. We're quite the pair. Broken and stubborn, surviving and fighting. Same thing, maybe. Yeah, maybe. They sat there until the stars came out, until the cold started to creep in, until the weight of the day finally settled into something manageable. What happens now? Cade asked. We keep going, keep building, keep showing up. That's it? That's the plan? That's the plan. Not very exciting. No, but it's real. And real's better than perfect. He smiled. When'd you get so wise? I'm not wise. I'm just tired of pretending I have all the answers. That might be the wisest thing you've said. They sat in comfortable silence until Cade finally stood to leave. Same time tomorrow? He asked. Same time tomorrow. It became their routine. Evening talks on her porch. Sometimes about important things. Sometimes about nothing at all. Winter came again. The first snow fell on a Tuesday afternoon, soft and quiet. Rhea stood on her porch watching it accumulate, thinking about the winter before, about the blizzard that had changed everything. She'd been so different then, so desperate to prove her worth, so angry at the world for making her fight for basic dignity. She was still angry, still fighting, but differently now. Not to prove anything to anyone else, but to build something for herself. A life that mattered. Not because others said so, but because she decided it did. Cade came by that evening as the snow continued to fall. Year ago today, he said, sitting beside her. You remember the exact date? Hard to forget the day you almost died. Fair point. They watched the snow fall in silence. You ever regret it? Cade asked. Coming up that mountain? No. Not even a little? Not even a little. You? Regret almost dying. Regret coming down. Regret everything that came after. Cade thought about it, really thought. No, it was hard. Still is sometimes. But I'm glad I'm here, glad I'm alive, glad I met you. That might be the nicest thing you've ever said to me. Don't get used to it. Wouldn't dream of it. More silence, comfortable, easy. What do you want? Cade asked. A year from now, 5 years, 10. Rhea had asked herself that question 1,000 times. The answer kept evolving. I want to wake up and not have to fight for the right to exist, she said. Want to walk into rooms and not wonder if I'm welcome. Want to matter, not because of what I've done, but because of who I am. You already do. Matter, I mean. To some people. But I want to matter to myself. Want to believe it even when the world says otherwise. You're getting there. Yeah, slowly. What about us? Cade asked. Where do we fit in that future? The question hung in the air. Heavy. Important. I don't know, Rhea said honestly, but I know I want you in it, however that looks. As friends? As friends. As whatever we are. As whatever we become. Cade nodded.
I can work with that. Good, because that's all I got.
It's enough. They sat until the cold became unbearable, until the snow piled high enough to muffle sound, and when Rhea finally went inside, she felt something she'd been chasing her whole life, peace. Not perfect peace, not the absence of struggle, but the deep, settled peace of knowing she was exactly where she was supposed to be. The years passed. Not quickly, but steadily. Rhea and Iris's store became the biggest in town. They expanded twice, hired more people, created jobs and stability. Cade became a fixture, not just at the livery, but in the community. People sought his advice about animals, about life, about surviving hard things. Tommy served as sheriff for 6 years before running for mayor. He won. Started implementing changes, building systems, creating accountability. The town wasn't perfect, still had problems, still had people who clung to old prejudices and comfortable lies. But it was better. Measurably better. And on quiet evenings, Rhea would sit on her porch and think about how far they'd all come. She wasn't the same woman who'd ridden into that blizzard. That woman had been desperate, angry, fighting to prove her worth. This woman knew her worth, didn't need to prove it, just lived it. 5 years after the trial, on a cold winter evening, Cade knocked on her door with a question. "Marry me," he said. No preamble, no grand gesture, just the question. Rhea stared at him. "What?" "Marry me. Be my wife. Build a life with me. That's the worst proposal I've ever heard. It's the only proposal you've ever heard. Still the worst." He almost smiled. "Is that a no?" Rhea thought about it, about what marriage meant, about what it would mean to tie her life to his, about how her life was already tied to his in every way that mattered. "Ask me properly," she said. "How?" On one knee, with actual words. "Make an effort." He dropped to one knee, winced as his bad ribs protested, but stayed down. "Rhea Calloway," he said, "you're the most stubborn, frustrating, incredible person I've ever met. You saved my life, changed my life, made me believe life was worth living, and I want to spend whatever time I have left proving you didn't make a mistake. So will you marry me?" "That's better." "Is it a yes?" She pretended to think about it. "Yes, it's a yes." He stood, kissed her. Not perfectly, they bumped noses and teeth, but honestly. They were married in the spring, small ceremony at the church. Just close friends and people who'd stood by them. Iris cried. Tommy gave a speech. McCready gifted them a set of ledgers with a note. For building something that lasts. And as Rhea stood beside Cade, promising to love and honor and fight alongside him, she realized something. She'd spent her whole life waiting to be chosen, to be seen as worthy, to matter to someone. But the truth was simpler and harder than that. She'd always mattered, always been worthy, always been enough. She just hadn't believed it, and believing it, truly believing it, changed everything. The town of Blackridge Hollow went on. People lived, fought, loved, made mistakes, and tried to fix them. Rhea and Cade built a life. Not perfect, not easy, but real. They had fights, disagreements, days when they barely spoke. But they also had mornings drinking coffee on the porch, evenings watching the sunset, moments of perfect, ordinary happiness. And sometimes, on quiet nights when the snow fell soft and steady, Rhea would think about the woman she'd been, the one who rode into a blizzard to save a stranger. That woman had been brave, desperate, fighting for something she couldn't name. This woman was different, settled, still fighting, but for different reasons now. Not to prove her worth, but to protect it, to build on it, to show the world that worth wasn't something you earned through suffering or proved through strength. It was something you claimed, something you chose. And once you chose it, once you really believed it, no one could take it away. 10 years after that first blizzard, Rhea stood on her porch watching another storm roll in. Cade came up behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist. "Thinking about old times?" he asked. "Thinking about how far we've come." "Regret any of it?" "Not even a little." "Good, because I don't either." They stood there as the snow began to fall. Two people who'd been broken and dismissed and nearly destroyed. Two people who'd chosen to survive, to fight, to matter. And in a world that constantly tried to tell them they weren't enough, they'd built something stronger than doubt. They'd built a life. A real one. Full of mess and beauty and ordinary magic. And that, Rhea thought, was the bravest thing she'd ever done. Not saving Cade.
Not exposing Dalton. Not standing up to the town. But choosing to believe, day after day, year after year, that she was worth the space she took up. That her existence mattered. That she deserved to be here. The snow fell harder. The wind picked up. The world grew white and wild. But inside Rhea's house, there was warmth, light, love. And that was enough. More than enough. It was everything.